What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Friday show, gang. Cujo's in the chat already saying happy Friday to everybody. I concur, Cujo. Happy Friday out there. Heading into what should be a fun weekend. A little sunshine. Getting to that part of the year, heading into May basically. That part of the year where it starts to get a little warmer. Had a nice stroll earlier with Joker walking around. A lot of people out and about in the park and everything. It's baseball weather. It's nice. Brings us to why we're all here, of course. This monster 13-game baseball slate. It's going to take us a little while to get through this one, gang. Buckle up for a long one. As I figure you probably, if you've been here before, you're probably expecting. If you haven't been here before, you might be clicking over to another show. We'll find out. We're going to be talking to each other about this one for a while. Got everything updated as far as recently as like 2 minutes ago with the lineups that have dropped. So everything's up on the site that's available so far. rotoscouts.com for your free projections. Top stacks, power index, home run picks, pitcher projections. Basketball projections are up there. Basketball, keep in mind, 5:30 lock if you're playing NBA today. I am skipping that one today. We were talking in the chat in the Discord earlier about Joel Embiid trying to rip the legs off of Mitchell Robinson, whether or not he should be suspended for it. A little chatter going on in Discord about that. Obviously didn't get the call, but seemed pretty blatant to me. But maybe that's the Knicks bias creeping in. Just ran one, Michael, and felt like we were on top of stuff. Forget whether it was that or the basketball. I ran one in basketball and one in baseball. One cashed, one did. I think the basketball one ended up cashing but not winning. And the baseball one I think fell short. I forget what I had. The hell did I have yesterday? There's definitely a lot of stuff we talked about on the show. I forget who it was who was my key stack yesterday though. I forget. Today I got some Yanks in my placeholder. Got some Luis Gil in there. Like his upside. Deep pitching slate today, though. A lot of ways this one can go. So we're going to dig into it. Fanatic's here. What's going on, Fanatic? Andy Melman, happy Friday back, buddy. Handful of people here to start the show. I'm sure we'll have more trickle in as we go. But we need to keep time, so let's get this thing rolling. Let me close the basketball file so that it's not bugging us down for any reason. Basketball file is a lot lighter weight than the baseball file. This one, as you guys I think have seen in the past, has just 1,000 different tabs on it. Basketball's just run by a few tabs. It's a lot easier. A lot fewer dead links in the basketball one dragging it down. So pitching. We'll start with pitching. Actually, no. We'll start with the Vegas board. This is a tough pitching slate, Fanatic. Yeah, absolutely. Got a nice big name up at the top. A bunch of good, high-end pitchers. A couple of older, quite talented guys. Musgrove and Aaron Nola facing one another, both in like I don't want to call it a full-on decline for either one necessarily, but Nola not as sharp as normal. Musgrove not as sharp as we've seen. Neither one completely bad. A little bit of up and down. One much more expensive than the other. Zach Gallen also not totally sharp. Highly priced, but a great matchup. I mentioned Luis Gil in my placeholder. I've got him with Yankee stacks. But I just like that. I like that last night when I was looking at this slate. Just looking at the surface of it. He's been outrageous with the strikeouts. Just needs to get his walks under control. Evaldi against Cincinnati. Bailey Ober going to be, I think, super popular on DraftKings at that price, $6,800. Facing a pretty soft Angels lineup with some strikeouts. Shota Imanaga. I think this is the first time we've had Imanaga on a main slate. I don't remember talking about him. I've been watching him. He's been terrific. Made, 4 starts before giving up an earned run? Give up 2, I think, in his last start. But I don't remember having him on a main slate or like one of our shows yet. So I'm psyched for him. Chris Sale, tough matchup against Cleveland. Musgrove, I already mentioned. Kyle Harrison hasn't really been the dominant pitcher out of the, to start his career that he's supposed to become one day. Fairly priced against Pittsburgh, but we're seeing some power going Pittsburgh's way. That one's an interesting one at the end of the night, and we're going to get to that one. Tune in about 2.5 hours, and we'll be talking about that game. But I like that spot. And then I do think, like, Crawford's playable. This one's dicey. If you're feeling really bold at 8,100 on both sites, that's super dicey. Wouldn't go near this. Don't really like him. Targeting him with bats gets ugly down here. Opener follower situation. I've got them both on the board like I did yesterday, but I don't think the most likely follower, Kyle Tyler, is correctly priced to be relevant. So it is a tough pitching slate, but it's a deep one with a lot of guys drawing, similar-ish projections through like the, let's call the line like Jose Buto. I think that maybe it's Cutter Crawford. Maybe that's the fair point to draw a reasonable line. But you've got a few, talented pitchers with value prices here. These guys too. So there's a lot to work with on this slate. Good slate for building a lot of lineups on DraftKings for sure with all the different pitching combinations that are available. Going to the run board. Should have eaten something before this show. My stomach is growling. Went to a great dinner with my parents last night in Jersey City. If you're looking for good Cuban food, if you're in Hoboken, go to La Isla. But if you're in Jersey City, like less than a half mile away or maybe a mile away, Rumba Cubana. Pretty good. Joker. Dog's in the other room. Probably scratching himself and panting up a storm for some reason. He's all fat. I think he got himself out of breath just scratching himself. Which happens to the best of us, let's be honest. Anyway, Athletics going up against the Orioles in that Corbin Burns game. 2.88 implied total for them. Orioles on the other side looking pretty decent at 4.73. I've got a little bit of them. Been going back and forth on what the second stack or what I'm going to do with the other spots in that lineup are. But right now there's some Orioles in it. Seems like a decent target. Dodgers at the Blue Jays, 4.71 on the Dodgers side. Keeping them under 5 is somewhat reasonable. But Bassett, depth, like we always talk about. Depth, some quality, but always going to give up a couple of runs in there and has some problematic starts. The completely unreliable Blue Jays going up against Gavin Stone, 4.39 total for them. Kind of a meh spot right now. Cubbies at the Red Sox, 4.03, 4.05 on either side. Pretty close-looking game with an 8-run total there. Decent pitching on both sides, or good pitching on both sides, I guess I should say. The Nationals and the Marlins in an ugly one. Just a 3.71 total on the Nationals side going to get up against the opener-follower combo. 4.48 on the Marlins side facing Trevor Williams. Neither one is all that appealing with an 8-run total, but either one of those sides could go off against kind of limited pitching. Cards and the Mets, 8-run total there. 4.28 for the Mets, just 3.81 for the Cards. Not really an appealing offensive spot on either side. Both teams up and down for offense in the best of times right now. Cards have gotten beaten a lot, haven't really come through for us in DFS. Mets have done the same thing, and both teams kind of at mediocre totals to low totals. Not really that appealing. One of these teams is really appealing. The other one is not all that appealing. The Guardians going up against Chris Sale. Could be a spot where they frustrate Sale in terms of what he costs for DFS purposes and what the strikeouts might look like. Sale's certainly capable of finding strikeouts against that Guardians team. Has them at a very low run total. But I could see it being, not necessarily saying, hey, this is the spot like we've talked about a couple times with this productive Guardians team, where it was like, hey, this is a spot where it seems like they're going to really do their thing and pile runs up. I'm not saying that. I think he's going to get through them and have a reasonable start. But I think they are good enough at limiting strikeouts that maybe it frustrates the true ceiling of a Chris Sale spot here. And then on the other side, the Braves, you fire away against Logan Allen. He hasn't looked at all like I thought he would this year, and not too happy with him. This might be his last day on the Dynasty team. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Not that this is the spot where he has to prove something, although a great start here would say a lot. Rays and the White Sox, low total in that one. Rays pretty heavily favored at 4.58. Zach Eflin going for them. He projects out like a terrific target going up against that just terrible White Sox lineup. It's going to be a thing all year long, as I keep saying, because it's just feels like I've got to continue to justify the fact that we just keep targeting the similar teams, but they're so low end. But he's a really good pitcher, so it's taking a high end pitcher in that spot, like we have with varied success over the last few days. 3.02 implied total for the White Sox. The Reds at the Rangers. Rangers drawing a 5.13 implied total, going up against Graham Ashcraft. Reds coming back the other way, just under 4 runs. Looks like a pretty decent spot to consider some Rangers bats. A lot of productive hitters in that lineup. Yanks and the Brewers. Yanks just a 4.48 implied total, but there's a lot of home run track record from Colin Ray from last year, and he was a guy we targeted with some success last year. I like some of these Yankees to get on track for home runs. I'm using one of my limited Aaron Judge choices as the home run pick of the day. Wanted to get him going. Yeah, Ozzie Albies back for the Braves too, for as Lone Wolf points out. So just enhanced version of the Braves lineup for Logan Allen to face. But I went with Aaron Judge as the home run pick of the day. Just the Yanks were showing out. Like I said, I like that spot. I just reflexively put them into my lineup when I was hand building it last night as a placeholder. Just checking out what the slate looked like. Brewers on the other side facing Luis Gil. Just a 4.11 implied total. Like I said, he's got to wrangle his walks, but the strikeout stuff has been terrific. He remains fairly cheap, affordable mid-range at worst. Twins and the Angels. Bailey Ober is going to be super popular on DraftKings. 4.10 total for the Twins. On the other side, the Angels just under 3.99, just under 4. Outside of the one messy start at the beginning, Ober's been all right. So it could be a decent spot that actually pays off at price. It's just going to be doing it at the same time as a lot of other people when there are good value options on the board. Diamondbacks at the Mariners. 7.5 run total there. Also a 7.5 run total in the Phillies and Padres games. Diamondbacks 3.99. Let's call that 4. 3.59 for the Mariners. And that's against Zach Gallen. The Phillies and Pods both have good pitchers going. It's the Aaron Nola and Joe Musgrove game. 3.82 for the Phils, 3.76 for the Padres. So all 4 of those teams, under 4 runs on the implied runs board, says a lot about the the quality of the pitching in those games and the quality of those matchups. It's Emerson Hancock on the mound for the Mariners, so it's kind of surprising to see the Diamondbacks as low as they are. But that's what we're dealing with. And then the Pirates at the Giants, the last game of the night, 4.65 implied total on the Giants side going up against Quinn Priester. 3.94 implied total for the Pirates facing Kyle Harrison. 8.5 run total there. I believe the wind is blowing out pretty aggressively in that game as well. But the high point right now, at least the last time I updated, was a 9 run total in that Dodgers Blue Jays game. And then a couple 8.5s. No Coors Field game, nothing drawing crazy ownership. But again, you do have Ober right in there. Crazy run total. I think I said ownership for some reason. I was thinking ahead to talking about Ober again. So he's going to be at a lot of ownership at that 6,800 mark, I think. And you do have Musgrove for 74. Buto has been pitching well against a Cardinals team that's been really gettable at 71. If you had to pull the trigger on Sandoval, I don't think it's completely crazy against the Twins team with some strikeouts. It's just lower faith. And then Luis Gil for 78 to me is in that range too, with a lot of strikeout upside. So I think there's some good spots to look to. There's some very high-end pitchers in incredible matchups. So we'll talk about all of it. Yeah, thanks for that. The weather, it was just that one game, really, right? Yeah, just the Rays and White Sox game. Looks like Roth is getting a little bit more optimistic. So the big thing that would impact is the Eflin spot, obviously. Number 2 pitcher on the board. On the White Sox side, it's Chris Flexen. Yeah, he's all the way down here. Don't really have to sweat the White Sox side of that one. But taking Eflin off the board, and to a degree, taking the Rays off the board against Chris Flexen in that spot would definitely be a little bit shape-changing for the slate. So first game up, unfortunately, we talk about the best overall pitcher on the entire slate up first, but let me grab this A's lineup it just dropped here. Corbin Burns, not quite at the level that we've seen him at in the past so far this year, but a pretty killer matchup for him. So I think it's a spot where you can fire away against the Athletics. It's a team, again, another one that we just target pretty heavily. It's an interesting version of this lineup that I'm seeing coming together here. I don't think he's got initials in his name. It's Daryl with one R and two L's. A lot of names to remember. And fuck. Tyler Schumann? What's Schumann's name? No, I might be thinking of Tiger Schulman. And yes, I know the keyboard is loud. Max Schumann. That's it. Okay. So it'll be updated later on after the show. So looking at this lineup, 26.2% strikeout rate current year for the confirmed version of the Athletics lineup. Last year, the guys who had stats were at 25.6%, and a couple of those guys were a little bit higher so far last year. Tyler Nevin was at 22.5. Esteury Ruiz was at 19.9. They're doing a little bit better so far this year. Shea Langoliers was a little bit higher. Rooker was actually a little bit lower. That probably makes up the difference for most of those other guys. But suffice to say, there are plenty of strikeouts available for Corbin Burns to find in this lineup. 25.4% strikeout rate. It's not quite the 30.5% from 2022 and the 30+ percents from a couple years back, but basically pitching in about this form with a lower walk rate so far this year. Last year was 25.5 over 193 and 2/3 innings in 32 starts, 3.39 ERA, 3.81 xFIP. Terrific across the board. This year, basically putting up those numbers again, walking fewer, 2.76 ERA, 3.04 xFIP, a .92 whip. Just a 12% swinging strike rate, down from 12.2, but he is finishing hitters off so far in the small sample against, even with the dip in swinging strikes. So it hasn't been problematic, really. 4 strikeouts in the last game, gave up 3 earned. 5 strikeouts the game before that, gave up 2 earned. Hasn't had monster strikeout totals outside of the first game against the Angels. He struck out 11 in that one. But his pitch, he worked 5 2/3 in the last game, 5 innings in the game before that, 7 innings in a middle game at Boston, where he struck out 6, gave up 1 earned. Hasn't been bad, but again, hasn't been completely sharp. He is very high priced, but I think, well, on FanDuel anyway, at $9,800 on DraftKings, that's actually a pretty nice price. I think FanDuel's just giving you a little bit of a matchup tax there, but he projects out at the top of the board, and I was not going to restrain him in any way in this matchup. And I think you're getting a pretty soft version of this A's lineup. There's no Seth Brown in it. There's no Noda. There's no Geloff. So this looks like a very gettable version of this A's team. I wouldn't really consider the A's outside of looking for some contrarian value. They're all very, very cheap. You can see how many guys in this lineup, 2,000, 23, 21, 23. In DraftKings pricing, 26, 2,000, 23, 22, a bunch of 3s, nobody over 45. So they're very, very cheap. You're going to target a incredibly talented pitcher, probably at fairly high ownership. He'd be at high ownership. The A's will be at very low ownership. So it would be a very contrarian move, and they've been a little bit frisky in spots, but again, not the best version of their lineup. Just doesn't feel like it's a successful spot many times. Basically, nobody at a reasonable home run rate. Brent Rooker, typically one of their higher-end guys, just halfway to the magic number. Looks pretty rough. Rooker's got 5 home runs this year. Shea Langoliers has 5 home runs. Those guys strike out at a 25%, and that last year was 29%, and a 43.9% last year. It was 32.7 for Rooker. Both below the Mendoza line, both in the 200s for on base. Not a lot of quality there when they're not just swatting home runs. Esteury Ruiz, 29 plate appearances, has looked really good. When he was sent down to the minors, he was tearing it up down there, showing some power this year. It's been kind of interesting off the top, but there's just not a lot to connect him to. Maybe you're just need an outfielder and you're not using Corbin Burns in that lineup, maybe you can grab Estuary just off the top of this for cheap, for just the idea that maybe he gets himself to first base twice, steals a couple bases, and scores a run. The home run upside against Corbin Burns for him, probably a little bit limited. So Burns is a big yes. And then the Orioles on the other side of this one, I think we could target Ross Stripling. Stripling has struck out 6 in 5 innings in his first start, but gave up 4 earned runs on 7 hits in that one. He's given up a handful of earned runs in most of his starts, 3 in each of the last 2 starts. Give up 6 earned runs against Texas. 5 strikeouts in that one was his second highest game, and the others are 3 and 4 strikeouts, a couple walks in every game. Amounts to a 5.34 ERA with a 3.89 xFIP. This does look nice and, significantly better than that. But when it's combined with just a 17.6% strikeout rate, 6.4% walks is fine, but just 7.8% swinging, 25% CSW, 1.57 whip despite the low walk rate. It's just a lot of hits here. In years past, last year in 89 innings and 11 starts, he had a 5.25% home run rate. Year before that, 9.2% barrels allowed, but it just amounted to 2.24% home runs. He was pretty effective that year. Wasn't bad this year. Had a similar xFIP ERA matchup, but he was gettable for power. So I like the idea that last year he was pretty gettable for power, even though he hasn't totally been this year. He's given up 2 home runs all in his 5 starts. I think the Orioles are good enough where we're going to be seeing plenty of bat on ball from them. I think they can work station to station and score some runs through sequencing, and we are seeing some power showing against him here. So I like this Orioles side. Wouldn't really consider Stripling. 5,700, it is a value price, but doesn't project out near what we need on a deep slate. 6,700, I don't think he's on the board on FanDuel. On the O side, Gunnar off to a terrific start. 8 home runs, 5 stolen bases, a 340 ISO, 192 WRC+. Dynamite starting spot for an Orioles stack. 6,000 is expensive, 4,200 is expensive, but he's been worth it. He's over the magic number for a home run. You also get Santander over the magic number. You get Ryan O'Hearn in the 9s, close enough. Ryan Mountcastle, 9.27 in the home run model. Lot of power showing for the Orioles. And Adley Rutschman also always capable of hitting one out. One of my top catchers always to keep in mind. He's never cheap like a lot of the other catchers that we can pick off when they climb the lineup and when they hit second or third, but he is hitting second or third, he is their 2-hitter every single day. He's 5,200, so it's not exactly the same as when we get those low 4s, high 3s, but he is so talented at the plate, and he plays every single day in that spot. He's got power, he's got a quality bat, 327, 368, 418 so far, 134 WRC+. Very enthusiastic whenever you can get Adley Rutschman into the lineup. Mountcastle has 2 home runs, 165 ISO, a 154 WRC+. He's getting on at a 385 clip, hitting 316 so far over 91 plate appearances. Been in and out of the lineup. He was banged up for a little bit, but back in the lineup last few days, 4,600, 3,200. Definitely effectively priced for his power upside. Very good premium contact profile over the last 3 seasons. Home runs have been up and down, but I always like Mountcastle for some cheap and really under-rostered power. Cedric Mullins, good power, good speed, 5 steals, 5 home runs so far this year. The average of triple slash isn't where you'd want it yet, but a good ISO at 218, 112 WRC+. Just keep doing what he's doing. I figure the average and everything will get where they need to be. Jordan Westberg, Colton Cowser, and Ramon Urias rounding out the lineup. And I buried the lead here. They sent Jackson Holliday back down to AAA. Get some more seasoning, which is yesterday or the day before. And here we are. They did, but you still get a lot of quality 1 through 8 here. And Ramon Urias, not really all that bad. Last year, just 4 home runs in 396 plate appearances, but was just below league average for run creation, 264, 328. Year before that, 445 plate appearances. He had 16 home runs, created runs 4% above average. Not a great year, but an effective year for a part-time utility man type. So Urias isn't really a dead spot, and he only cost $2,100 at first or third. Kind of wish he had second base eligibility on DK since Westberg's just a third baseman. It kind of sucks that they make you decide between Westberg, Mountcastle, and then you have to decide between Mountcastle and O'Hearn over there. A little bit more challenging to roster the O's on that site. Everybody's got multi-position on FanDuel. It doesn't really matter. Westberg's been terrific, and Colton Cowser's been terrific. A little bit of hot and cold from Colton Cowser. But overall, numbers are killer. 6 home runs so far, a 400 ISO, a 224 WRC+. Plus. He's stolen 3 bases. Westberg got 5 homers, 4 steals. The team just fills categories. So looks like a killer spot against Stripling. So A's, unless you're just wild to get contrarian and pay nothing in salary. Like if you wanted to go double expensive pitcher on DraftKings, and one of them's not Corbin Burns, then maybe you could consider some A's as like a secondary stack with some of these cheap guys, but it's really, really limited. Like I said, you'd be looking at like Estuary, probably Langoliers and Rooker would be an easy way to do that, but those aren't even their cheapest guys, so you're almost defeating the purpose. So Orioles, Bats, Corbin Burns, both big yeses. Ross Stripling's a huge no, and the A's only if you just want to get weird and contrarian. That took too long. We've got 13 games to talk about. Michael says, near impossible to get to Burns on FanDuel. Yeah, I didn't even try. I just kind of I defaulted to cheap pitching on a slate like this. Check Discord. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Lone Wolf. I saw you just dropped the notes into Discord there. Yeah, so no worries really in the other games. So wind blowing out in Atlanta, it looks like. What else? I don't know what all these arrows mean. I assume down is in and up is out. Where's the San Francisco game? Yeah, that's the one I was looking at the wind earlier. Wind blowing out to like right center in San Francisco. Looks like Angel Stadium, the wind is blowing out a little bit. Atlanta, it's blowing in a little bit. Fenway's blowing out a little bit to the left. All right, I can't sit here and play weatherman. Who else is in here? Let's see. So yeah, Michael's. Andy said, Michael, I like Burns with a Miami stack on FanDuel. Definitely an interesting spot for Miami as one of those probably low-owned, not great, but a couple reasonable hitters. We're going to talk about that one in a minute. Let me focus. So Gavin Stone, Chris Bassett. Bassett's the one I think if we're interested in here, despite them projecting fairly similarly across sites, a little bit more faith in Bassett, even with the tough matchup, than Stone. Bassett, a little bit better stuff by stuff plus ratings if we want to go by that. The ERA's been a little bit better. The XFIP's a little bit better. The strikeouts are a little bit higher. Typically does pitch deep into ball games and can make up for mistakes like we've talked about before. Last time out, and he's not been great, but he's not been awful. Right, 4 earned runs in each of the first 2 games. But then a stretch of 1 earned run, 2 earned runs last time. Had an 8 strikeout game in 6 2/3 against that Seattle team. Went 6 1/3 against the Yankees. Gave up just 1 run on 4 hits. Struck out 5 but walked 2. Last game wasn't great. It was at the Padres. Went 5 1/3. Give up 2 earned on a home run. 6 total hits. And 4 total runs. Just 2 of them were earned. 4 strikeouts, 3 walks. So that's like the up and down nature of Chris Bassett. And he can be bad on occasion. The price is fine at 8,100 on either site. He's just in like a, kind of a mid-range pitcher, league average-ish numbers in a lot of ways. And again, relies on depth in a lot of cases. So throwing him up against the Dodgers just seems like a why would you want to spot on such a deep slate. But if I had to decide on one of these 2 guys, I think that is where I would roll the dice. Gavin Stone, 19.1% strikeout rate and 11.9%. Both of these guys walking too many hitters. Stone hasn't given up a home run yet. He's got a 6 ERA, though, a 4.56 XFIP. He went 3 1/3 in the last game, gave up 2 earned runs in each of his last games, but didn't pitch deep in that one. Went 6 2/3 in the game before that. Struck out 4, walked 1, gave up 2 earned on 5 hits. That was against the Pods. Against the Mets, he didn't pitch deep at all, just faced 18 hitters. I'm not sure what happened there. Oh, walked 5, so probably just pitch count got away from him. So that was 1 strikeout, 5 walks in that game. 2 earned runs on 4 hits. 5 Ks and 6 Ks in the first 2 games. Gave up 5 runs to Chicago, just 3 to the Cardinals, but Cardinals haven't been scoring on anybody. 75, 77 for him across sites. He's fine in terms of where he's priced compared to some of the other guys. But as we saw at the top of the show, we have guys that we like in that mix. Cup of coffee last year, 31 innings, 4 starts. Didn't really do much to encourage us here. So I think we could stay away from Gavin Stone, even though the Blue Jays haven't been great. Just doesn't look like a crazy good spot. See if we've got any of these lineups. We do. We have both, and they're on labs. That'll make it easy. Oops. I realized it. Let me just do this. And I wouldn't avoid Dodgers bats against Chris Bassitt really in any way, especially with him walking a ton of hitters so far, giving up a little bit of premium contact, 10% barrels, 42.5% hard hits, 90.2 miles an hour of exit velo, a couple of home runs so far. So Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman off the top, pretty easy to get to. Well, that's an overstatement. Pretty easy just to know that you need to roster those 3 guys as much as possible when you go to this Dodgers team. But they're difficult to get to because of the pricing. Freddie on FanDuel at 35 is still kind of interesting. 56 is a discount on DraftKings as well. He's a 4,000, 6,000 player for sure, just like the other 2. So you get a cheaper Freddie Freeman. Kind of puts him in range with these guys is just like it lowers the cost of that as a discounted 4-man. $3,300 apiece for Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, and Teoscar Hernandez against Chris Bassitt on FanDuel is actually not bad at all. Kind of like that. Betts has 6 home runs, 6 steals. Ohtani's got 6 home runs, 5 steals. Betts is creating runs 109% better than average. Ohtani only 97% better than average. He's going to lose his job. Freddie Freeman, 141 WRC plus. Will Smith, a 141 WRC plus. Max Muncy, 125. Teoscar, 127. Pretty dynamite top end of the batting order here. 157 is their average for run creation above average. Average home runs is 4 among that group. Freddie only with 1. Will Smith only with 1, but they're both doing their thing in terms of getting on base, setting the table, keeping strikeouts low. It's also a very tough strikeout matchup for Chris Bassitt, so it just, again, limits that up any kind of ceiling. Down lineup, you get James Outman, 3,600, 2,600. Interesting hitter, hasn't gotten off to a good start at all. 81 plate appearances, 178, 259, 301, a 63 WRC plus, but does have good lefty power and speed, like a 2020 candidate. I was calling him a 25-25 candidate, and that ship might have sailed already. But good power, good speed. Last year, over 567 plate appearances, 23 homers, 16 steals. So you can see it wasn't me just being bold with this player. A lot of people liked him. I already traded him. He was part of the Ha-Sung Kim deal. It was him and Jesse Winker. Andy Pages, 2,900, 2,500, still very cheap. 2 home runs on the season already since his call-up 33 plate appearances ago. High-end power prospect at 290 ISO. Seems pretty realistic. 14.3% barrel rate in a very tiny sample of batted ball events. But he's put bat on ball well over his first 33 plate appearances. So he's in the mix for cheap shares. Gavin Lux at second base is in the mix for cheap shares. Another player hasn't done much yet this year, but they still think a lot of him after he missed all of last year with injury. On the Blue Jays side, you can target Gavin Stone. The Blue Jays, again, for these, it's difficult to ignore this group of talented players getting this cheap on both sites. They haven't been good, but they haven't been completely atrocious. They've been bad, right? They haven't been good. They've been bad, but there are, 99 WRC plus. All right, so George Springer's been 1% worse than average. He's created some counting stats. He's just not getting on. He's not hitting for enough average. He's certainly not scoring the ball up, but he didn't do that really last year either. He was better at it a little bit the year before. He's still limiting strikeouts and walks. So I feel like these guys are not all that far off for the depth to which they've been discounted. It's just when's the night where they turn it on. Vladdy Guerrero, 4,900 for Vladdy, 3,000. Still positionally blocked with Justin Turner, which sucks. But all 3 of Springer, Vladdy, and Bichette are hitting 221 collectively with a 309 on base. Those players are just better than that. Vladdy's got 3 home runs. Bichette's got a home run and 3 stolen bases. So none of them have really provided the counting stats that we expect from them. They've just been there in spots, and they haven't really come together yet. But that's why we're getting them so cheap against Gavin Stone, which, again, no real strikeouts to speak of, gives up runs, hasn't given up much power, hasn't given up many barrels or much hard hit. But these guys are capable of generating that. Turner's been really good, 324, 416, 514. Doing Justin Turner things, 72% better than average, creating runs. Varsho hitting for a little bit of power at 6 home runs, 165 WRC plus, a 303 ISO. Just a 9.3% barrel rate, 38.9% hard hits. Not exactly killer premium contact any of these years, including the Arizona years. So it's about where he's been. So, I don't really question the 6 home runs. I think it's okay. And if he's going to be this version of this hitter, that could be interesting for Toronto going forward. So 3,833 is appropriately priced. Danny Jansen's got catcher power, 8.87 in the home run model, 3,600, 2,600 across sites. Hasn't done anything yet in 19 plate appearances, but we've seen Danny Jansen hit for moderate power before. 17 home runs in 301 last year, 15 home runs in 248 plate appearances year before. Addison Barger at the dead minimum price outfielder on DraftKings, dead minimum price shortstop on FanDuel. 4 plate appearances, hadn't done anything yet. We looked at him briefly the other day. It's like a mid-level prospect, if I remember correctly, but was doing interesting things. Pull him back up real quick. 24 years old, ranked 4th overall on the team as a prospect, according to the 24 report that's up on graphs. Yeah, this was right. So it was 397 plate appearances last year, 9 homers, 5 stolen bases in AAA. This year had 3 home runs early in AAA. Was a very good triple slash, 314, 435, 586, was creating runs. But yeah, not like an elite talent, doesn't look like. But for the mid price, if you need a mixer, somebody to keep in mind, maybe. IKF, Kevin Biggio. Biggio, it was out to an okay start when he was hitting higher up in the lineup and has tailed off already. 1 home run, 1 stolen base, 113 WRC plus, but a cratering triple slash. Not sure what we get out of Biggio the rest of the way. IKF mostly here for defense. So Dodgers bats for sure. Blue Jays bats, if you want to roll the dice on guys that we know are good players at very, very good prices against not a good pitcher, it's not a bad spot to do it in. Or maybe I should say an unproven pitcher. Give Gavin Stone a chance. But not a bad spot to do it in with the Blue Jays. There's just so much meat on the board today. It's difficult to really enthusiastically endorse them. Wouldn't really play Stone and don't really love the spot for Chris Bassett with the matchup and not a discounted enough price for it. Red Sox lineup we've got. Cubbies lineup doesn't look like it's on Labs yet. I won't bog the show down by typing in the ones that aren't up on Labs yet. We'll just talk it through. So Cutter Crawford, he's been fairly interesting this season. A .66 ERA is always good. 3.88 xFIP, probably a little bit more honest, but a 27.3% strikeout rate with 10.8% swinging strikes, 26.6% CSW. He's walked a few too many. That's where some of those called strikes have gone. But just a .99 whip. He's not getting hit really at all. 29.4% hard hit rate is excellent. 85.8 miles an hour of exit velo. A little bit of fly ball trajectory, but not a egregiously bad barrel number. Not giving up a ton of hard hits or power or exit velocity. Hasn't given up a home run yet. So pitching pretty well. 1 earned run in his last start. Went 6 against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Gave up 7 hits. Walked 3, struck out 6. He struck out exactly 6 in each of his last 3 starts. 5 2/3 against Cleveland with 6 strikeouts and just 2 hits against that Cleveland team. That's an accomplishment against the low strikeout Guardians. The Orioles was another team, struck out 6, walked 4 in that one, but just 2 hits, no earned runs in that one. He's given up 2 earned runs all year in his 5 starts, 27 1/3 innings. I like this Cubs team, as we've talked about a bunch of times. They had a Pete Crow Armstrong. He got out of the gate pretty hot with a home run yesterday. They get on base a ton. Losing Cody Bellinger sucks for them. they haven't been, they're a mixed group collectively for what they've done so far this year. But there's a lot of good on base percentages already on the board, not so much in this range, but up at the top of the lineup. And there's a lot of guys that we know are very good at sequencing, getting on base, moving station to station, and then waiting on one of these power hitters. So I think you can get there with the Cubbies if you are Dennis and you really want to play a Cubs stack just because you do. Then sure. But it's not a really good-looking spot against Carter Crawford here. On the other side, Imanaga, he didn't give up an earned run in his first 3 starts. I said 4 earlier. It was his first 3. The 4th start, he gave up 2 earned. That was against Miami. Went 6, 5 hits, 3 total runs, 2 earned, 1 home run. That was also the first home run he gave up. Struck out 5, walked 0. He's given up 2 earned runs all year in 4 starts, and he's walked 2 hitters so far. That's pretty impressive. Lefty, he was a more under-the-radar signing than Yamamoto. Got a much smaller deal, but he's been really, really sharp. 2.4% walk rate, 25.6% strikeouts over 21 1/3, a .84 ERA, a 3.33 xFIP, 12.9% swinging strike rate is terrific. Needs to work on the called strikes a little bit, but if he's not walking anybody, I guess it doesn't really matter when he's striking guys out at that rate. Gave up the 1 home run, so that's the 1.22. He's given up a little bit of hard hit and exit velo on a pretty aggressive launch angle, so that could change in an awful hurry. There are home runs in this Red Sox team. There is some good premium contact in this Red Sox lineup. But I kind of like the spot for Imanaga. The model likes it. He projects out pretty well, 9,600, 10-2. So I think both pitchers are very playable, and Imanaga probably takes it for me going up against a weaker Boston lineup. Boston does have their typical approach against lefties. So Jarren Duran, who's not bad lefty, in the leadoff spot for 48-32. Tyler O'Neill was having a great start to the year. Ran into Rafael Devers, who had ranged back into left field for some reason. Took a concussion, was out for a little bit. Back in the lineup now, over 70 plate appearances, 7 home runs, a stolen base, a 368 ISO, 204 WRC+. Ref Snyder in his 24 plate appearances, 429, 478, 857, a home run, a stolen base, a 275 WRC+, 429 ISO. That would obviously be like the best player in baseball by a mile. And Rob Refsnyder, firmly not that, not even against lefties. But they do roll him out in this 3 spot a lot against lefties, and he's always cheap. And he's relatively productive. So if you just wanted to straight line off the top of the Red Sox stack, that's the approach. I think he's been reliable enough in that role that you can include him in that stack. I do like Connor Wong with a little bit of pop from the catcher position. Over 58 plate appearances this year. He's already hit 5 home runs, 364, 379, 655, a 291 ISO. Pablo Reyes, 2,700, 2,400, multi-position eligible on both sites. Hasn't been productive at all so far this year. Last year, 287, 339, 377, but a 93 WRC+. Did steal 7 bases. In a pinch, he's playable with the cheap pricing in the multi-position. I prefer Bobby Dahlbeck for DFS purposes. Issue with him, though, is he's been getting like 2 plate appearances and then getting lifted. So that's going to be problematic. You got to weigh that against the potential for some home run upside against the lefty. He's got a 6.88 in the model. He's on a 2-game hitting streak now. .077, 143, 103 with a .026 ISO and a negative 36 WRC+ so far. Looking for that first home run of the year, Bobby. Manuel Valdez and Ceddanne Rafaela at the bottom of the lineup. Both have been pretty weak to start the season, so it's a fairly low-end Red Sox lineup outside of, realistically, those 4 guys and then Rob Refsnyder doing his thing. If you're going to the Cubs side, Nico, still with just the 1 stolen base, but a 385 on-base percentage. He's going to run more if he's in that leadoff spot, as we've talked about. Tauchman, also a very good on-base so far this year and demonstrably good over time at getting on base. So having those 2 guys setting the table, with Ian Happ also in that 3 spot, helping set the table. He's got a 360 on base, was very good at getting on base throughout his career. Also has a better bat than what he's shown so far this year with the 238 and the 357 slug and the 119 ISO and just one home run in 100 plate appearances. Ian Happ's better than that. So there's more to come from him. It's a top, very solid three-man group at putting runners on ahead of Michael Busch, Chris Morel, Dansby Swanson, Matt Mervis, now Pete Crow Armstrong, where the power in this lineup is. Swanson's got 3 home runs. Morel's got 3. Michael Busch has 6. Great start, over 90 plate appearances for him with a 266 ISO. You're kind of just targeting if you have a lack of faith in what Cutter Crawford has done so far this year, if you want to say that, all right, two of those early starts, and I've mentioned this before, the Red Sox rotation greatly benefited from facing the AL West on a road trip over the first 2 weeks of the season. So his first 2 starts were against the Mariners and the Angels, but then he faced the Orioles, was very good in that start, and was very good against Cleveland. 2 productive teams. The Pirates, you can go back and forth with. He was only okay in that game, but it's not only been the competition. He's looked good up there, so I don't necessarily want to target Crawford all that much. I think I lean pitching on both sides in this one. 8,300 is a very effective price, too, for Cutter Crawford. Puts him squarely on the value board. It's just, I like these value guys that are in the 7s and the 6s and the 7s that are ranked a little higher, a little bit better. But he's probably not going to be crazy popular. So you can play Cutter Crawford, not a priority. Imanaga, a little bit more of a priority at the big projection, but not all the way at the top of the board either. Just slots in here below some of these other guys, and again, guys at better prices. But I would have him in the mix. I would consider him in the mix with Gallen, Nola, Eflin, Chris Sale. That's right where he belongs. So it's kind of a 4 corners are playable spot, and if you had to prioritize one thing over everything else, it's probably Imanaga. See what you guys are talking about. Larry just got here. Larry thought we were starting at 3:30. 1.5 speed, and I'll catch up at some point. Dennis wants to play a Yankee stack. May include former Cubs. There you go. It's one way to do it. He's in mine. All right, we need to keep going. What lineups do we need here? Nats and the Marlins. Do we have the Nats lineup? We do. Is it basically the same? I know I said I wasn't going to bog the show down by doing this, but I'm doing exactly that. As long as I don't have to type that much. If I do it this way, it's a little easier. Abrams, Winker, Meneses. Yeah, this is completely different. Keybert. All right, this is the last one I'm going to type in. For real. Trey Lipscomb and Jacob Young. All right. Both lineups in for this one. All right, so we don't want pitching in this game. Even in your deepest, darkest nightmares, just Trevor Williams, even against the Marlins, doesn't look great. 2.91 ERA, fine. 3.71 xFIP, fine. An average strikeout rate, fine. Stuff plus, very low. Doesn't really like his arsenal. 6 innings last time out, struck out 4, gave up 1 earned to Houston. But Houston's been weird. I still have total faith in that lineup to turn things around. I don't think they've been nearly as bad as their wins total might suggest. But it was an effective start. Start before that, gave up 3 earned, struck out 7, but 3 earned runs, 6 hits in 5 1/3 against the Athletics. Faced the Giants, gave up 1 earned, walked 3, struck out 2. Pirates, 5 1/3, 3 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 5 Ks. I don't know. I greatly prefer targeting pitchers like this rather than using them. I guess at 63, if you really were mixing things up in the value bin on DraftKings. But this is the guy I think of more when I think Trevor Williams. 16.8% strikeout rate last year. Over 143 1/3 in a full season. 30 starts. So we're not getting much depth out of him on the average. 5.55 ERA with a 5.22 xFIP, a 1.60 WHIP, a 7.9% swinging strike rate that has not climbed despite his strikeout rate climbing. The CSW climbed a little bit. He's gotten some calls, throwing more called strikes. 5.16% home run rate last year, 10.2% barrel rate. I think there's good justification to consider some of these Marlins, and they're another team that is just cheap. Jazz Chisholm Jr. Jazz projects out very well today for the 4,900, 3,000 across sites. 10.57 in the home run model to lead the team. He's just got 2 on the year, 5 stolen bases, just a 97 WRC plus. Putting bat on ball fairly well in terms of barrel rate. Needs to pick up some hard hit rate a little bit, but has always been good at putting bat on ball. So I feel like Jazz is another player we're like right there with. So could be a good spot for a breakout against Trevor Williams. Brian De La Cruz, 262, 286, 439. Those numbers were better a week ago, but does have 5 home runs, a stolen base, 99 WRC plus. Luis Arias up to 299, 353 in the front end of the triple slash. What we care about with Arias, above average for run creation. No stolen bases, but as long as he's starting to hit a little bit, starting to get himself to first base, that's what he does, and he just provides correlated scoring with the next few guys in the lineup. Josh Bell for 3,800, 2,700 is cheap. 3 home runs on the board so far for him. Just a 126 ISO. Really bad in terms of the WRC+. plus. Premium contact hasn't been good. Switch hitting first baseman for very cheap prices, who in the past, he's had a track record of hitting home runs. It's been ugly so far this season. Jesus Sanchez, 2,927 in the outfield. A little bit of power from the left side of the plate. Just 2 home runs, a 103 ISO, 70 WRC plus so far this year. Last year, 14 home runs in 402 plate appearances. Decent amount of output, just injured a lot. Never really gets a full shot to get things going. Over the 62 plate appearances this year, very low sample of batted ball events, but 11.9% barrels, 52.4% hard hits. Right in line or better than what he's done in the past in terms of premium contact. So another hitter we could get a breakout from at some point here in the near future. Timmy Anderson, not really looking for the breakout. Just kind of any sort of signs of life would be nice. 3,300, 2,400, 220. He's hitting 229, 264, 253, a 47 WRC plus so far. It's been bad for Timmy. Nick Gordon, Vidal Brujan, and Nick Fortes at the bottom of the lineup. All 3 have been pretty bad so far. Gordon does have 3 home runs, but he's just above the Mendoza line at 241 on base. Everybody's really weak in terms of the WRC+. plus. You can see how bad this team is, right? If you're looking for justification for rostering Trevor Williams at 63, a lot of it's right there. It's average of a 60 WRC+. plus. So on average, the Marlins have been 40% worse than average with this lineup creating runs. So at 63, yeah, like I said, if you want to call Trevor Williams a value dart throw a few times on DraftKings, I guess you could do it. At 78 on FanDuel, it feels like a stretch, especially with his lack of depth. And he's not as good as he's been this year. And this year he's only been like meh, like league average-ish with bad stuff. Anthony Maldonado is an opener that they called up. 4,000. I'm not expecting more than an inning. So we don't roster even at 4,000. I don't think we have any cause to roster Anthony Maldonado. He's given up some good looks to the national side of things. I think you could also look there for some quality. C.J. Abrams off the top. Jesse Winker. Maybe some Luis Garcia, but just because he's been pretty good so far this season and he's just been hitting up at the top of the lineup. Nice to have Keibert Ruiz back in that lineup. After Maldonado, the probable pitcher is supposed to be this guy, Kyle Tyler. So you can see against him, the numbers come down a little bit in the home run rate. He last pitched in the show in 2022. He was also just recently recalled. In 22, he worked 4 innings. Not exactly a gigantic sample. He worked 12 and a third back in 2021. He was on the Angels back then. He's given up just 1 home run to 66 hitters over 16 and a third professional innings or major league innings. Last year in 135 innings at Double-A, he gave up 15 home runs to 619 hitters. That's not reflected in here. So I think the Kyle Tyler, I kind of just left it with the other guy just to even out the home run rate. I think it's higher than what it would be showing against Kyle Tyler here. So that's why I just left that guy. But Tyler's a non-threatening pitcher is the point. You probably get a couple of innings out of him, 3 maybe. And I don't expect him to be at all playable. I forgot he was... forgot to show his price. He's priced at 6,300, 5,600 on FanDuel. Don't think he's all that usable. Abrams, 302, 362, 628 at the top of the lineup. A 326 ISO. He's created a run 67% better than average with 6 homers and 5 stolen bases on the board. He's been just tremendous. That's where you start your national stack. Jesse Winker, it started out really hot. It's cooled a little bit, but 2 home runs, 2 steals, 282, 400 on base, still 436 slug, 138 WRC plus at the back end of that, creating runs 38% better than average. Both of those guys a little bit of strikeout, but doing better than, Winker anyway is doing better than he was last year. A lot of walk rate for some of these hitters. Meneses not striking out too much, walking a little bit, 257, 337, 284. Still no homers, just a .027 ISO. Doesn't really make premium contact all that frequently. Hits the ball hard, but not enough elevation probably is his issue. 78 WRC plus. Hasn't been great this year. Garcia, 311, 346, 446, 5 steals. Been productive with a 121 WRC plus. Kiebert is a catcher who hits the ball frequently. 10.3% strikeout rate with just a 5.5% walk rate last year. This year, that's 15.8 and 5.3 in just 38 plate appearances. So anybody for DFS, and I've talked about it a lot, anybody for DFS that's going to just put the ball in play that frequently, especially at a spot like catcher, especially a switch hitter for just 3,500, kind of interested in. So maybe a guy to keep in mind is a one-off catcher play. He's got decent mid-range power. He's not the best hitter in the world, but he's always putting the ball in play. So that keeps him interesting. If you are stacking Nats, you can put him in. If you're not stacking Nats, hitting 5th at a good price, maybe somebody to keep in mind where you need to play catchers. FanDuel, that's much less of a priority as a one-off, by the way. When I talk one-off catchers, it's mostly related to DraftKings. Joey Gallo, 3 home runs on the season. I think he's got 1 single. That was what I saw yesterday, like 40-something strikeouts and 1 single. But he's got 17.2% walk rate to go with the 46% strikeouts over 87 plate appearances. Well below the Mendoza line. Below a 300 on base isn't going to get it done. He's got to keep that on base in like the 320, 330 range to keep his WRC plus above water. 200 ISO isn't exactly great from him yet either. But when he does make contact, and there should be contact available in this game, the ball travels. Lipscomb, Jacob Young, mix and match parts at the bottom of the lineup. A couple stolen bases for each of those guys. 4 for Lipscomb and 6 for Jacob Young. Neither one above average for run creation. Neither one is hit for power. Probably prefer the Marlins in terms of targeting Trevor Williams, but it's bats on either side if I'm going to anything from this game. It's 2 lousy teams, but discounted with some interesting parts on either side against bad pitching. So I think it is a spot that you can mine for value bats. So both teams, bats are on the board. Mostly, top 5 hitters, 5, 6, some 7 down here for the Nats, I guess. But neither one is like a high priority. It's just for pricing value and an opportunity for some cheap shots at bad pitching. Mets lineup is in. Copy paste it. Miles Michael is pretty frequently a no for me. Not enough strikeout upside really to justify even the cheap pricing on most slates. 17.2% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate, a 6.49 ERA with a 4.05 xFIP. Just a real pitch to contact type of a pitcher. Last time out, 4 2/3. Time before that, just 4 2/3. Struck out 5 last time against Milwaukee. Struck out 3 against the Diamondbacks. Gave up 5 earned in each of those games. Just 2 earned in the 2 starts between those and his first start. Against Philly, went 6 2/3, struck out 3, 2 earned. 6 innings against the Padres, struck out 4, also 2 earned. And then first start of the year was another bad one, 4 1/3, give up another 5 earned runs. Struck out 5, walked 2 against the Dodgers, gave up 2 homers in that one. And he gave up 3 homers in his last game against Milwaukee. In the 3 games in between, he had given up no homers. Kind of a weird little wrinkle. It's not the best spot in the world to target in terms of, let's run away with a ton of Mets shares here. with the bats. I think at the top end you can stack this Mets team a little bit against Michaelis. But, even with the 5-run games, those aren't disaster games. 3 home runs is nice, obviously. Maybe you can stack against them a little bit more aggressively. I guess, part of it is that this Mets team hasn't been great to us. Part of it's that the back end of the lineup is kind of weak. Very tepid endorsement for anything Mets. Pete Alonso is definitely interesting here. 10.68 in the home run model. 3,400, 5,300. He's very effectively priced. He's got 7 home runs this year, a 253 ISO, 142 WRC+. Starlin Marte's up creating runs 22% better than average with 4 home runs and 6 stolen bases. Looking a lot like the old version of Starlin Marte. 106 WRC+ for Nimmo. Still well below the Mendoza line. Not having a good season so far with the bat over the first month and change. But 358 on base, can't argue with that. That keeps him relevant, keeps him above water for WRC+, and it's kept his pricing pretty low. So this Mets team is cheap, but you have to bake in a struggling Francisco Lindor. He's got 4 home runs and a stolen base, a 155 ISO, 11% worse than average creating runs, 206, 291 on the front end of the triple slash. Not great from him. You do get a bonus on DraftKings. You get JD Martinez in there now, 4,400. Premium power hitter over time. No stats yet this year. This would be his debut. 33 home runs in 479 plate appearances last year. So he's still got it. No real questions about Martinez. 17% barrels, 54.8% hard hits last year. Makes this Mets team a little bit more interesting. It's just a shame that they don't have Francisco Alvarez anymore to follow him. Alvarez on the injured list with a broken thumb, I want to say. Tomas Nido getting the catcher duties for this team at the bottom of the lineup. Don't recall him ever doing anything with the bat. 3 homers 2 years ago and 313 plate appearances. A defense forward catcher. Brett Beatty down at the bottom for 3,000, 2,600. Moderately interesting. Capable of squaring pitches up, which we saw a little bit of last year, but it didn't result in a ton of power production. Hasn't hit for power so far this year. Below average for run creation. 267, 329. He's probably the most interesting hitter down lineup because I don't really like Jeff McNeil that much. Harrison Bader is an up and down player, a little bit of counting stat production, but really not all that good. 15% below average for run creation so far. McNeil is above average, 115 WRC+. That's based mostly on the 352 on base. Just hitting 269. Slap hitter, needs those base hits to drop in. So really, it's the top 5 against Michaelis, which is kind of why it's limited on FanDuel. It's just the top 4. And then you can mix and match if you're bound and determined to build a bunch of Met stacks. You can mix and match your way through the bottom. On the card side, they've just been disappointing so far this year. Jose Bluto's been really good. Over 3 starts, 16 and a third. He's got a 1.65 ERA, a 3.60 xFIP. He's walking too many at 13.6%, but he's striking out 31.8% of that small sample. 12.3% swinging strike rate is terrific. That was the Dodgers the last time out. He struck out 6, walked 5 against the patient Dodgers, gave up 2 earned on 3 hits. Struck out 9 against the Royals. 6 innings in that one, gave up just 2 hits, no runs. 6 strikeouts in the first game against Detroit. Walked 3, just 1 earned run on 3 hits. He's been very, very difficult to hit. He's been finding strikeouts. Only cost $7,100 on the DraftKings slate, $8,000 on FanDuel. I think he's in the mix on both sites. The depth on FanDuel might be the only question, but he's gone 6 in 2 of his games. Just walked the world in that Dodgers start, which kind of makes sense. And this Cards team, they're not egregiously bad for strikeouts. They've got some very low strikeout veterans in the lineup, but they're gettable. They're more gettable than the Dodgers are. So for $7,100, I think Buto's firmly on the SP2 board on DraftKings, and I wouldn't completely rule him out on FanDuel. I think you can get 6 clean with a handful of strikeouts here. Cards bats against him if you wanted to draw against a pitcher who's been really on point. They are showing a little bit of power. William Contreras out to a good start this season. 294, 422, 529 with a 235 ISO. 67 WRC plus with 3 homers and a stolen base. Costs only $4,600. Hitting second as a catcher. Definitely one to keep in mind for those catcher one-off shares. Definitely a guy you could build into stacks with this team. $3,100 on FanDuel. He's definitely playable in my FanDuel stacks as well if I'm stacking cards, which I really probably not doing much of tonight. Brendan Donovan for 4,000, 2 positions on DraftKings, 3,100, 4 positions on FanDuel. Just a 94 WRC plus, just a 130 ISO, 2 homers. Hasn't been great, but a great spot in this lineup with that kind of value and that kind of positional flexibility. And a hitter that has been productive over time. Puts bat on ball very well, doesn't strike out a ton, draws his walks, typically can get on base, and does have a little bit of power from the left side. Lars Nootbaar, power from the left side, 54.3% hard hits in over his 50 plate appearances. It's only amounted to 1 home run, 1 stolen base, but that's a nice step forward in the small sense. He was around that level 2 years ago, 12.1% barrel, 46% hard hit. Just another frequently injured player, not striking out, drawing a ton of walks so far. Again, very, very small sample. Arenado, Goldschmidt, Goldie struggling much more than Arenado is. Arenado's above average at 8% by 8% for run creation. 295, 343, 389 triple slash. Only 1 home run. The power hasn't been there at all. 1.2% barrel rate, 29.4% hard hit. Maybe they should take these 2 older veterans and have their eyes checked, because these guys are not squaring the ball up well at all anymore. Goldie just 3.3% barrels, 32.8% hard hits. 200, 294, 278, a .078 ISO, just a 67 WRC plus. It's getting concerning. Down lineup now. Alec Burleson, very cheap, semi-productive player when he's in the lineup. 70 WRC plus, over 54 plate appearances. Total non-priority. Nolan Gorman, getting barrels. 13.5% barrel rate, down a little bit from his previous seasons, but it's just 92 plate appearances. Everything else has been pretty bad. He's got 4 home runs off of that contact, but not much else to speak of. Just a 186 ISO, too, off of 13.5% barrel rate. There should be more power showing. 78 WRC plus, so he hasn't been good. That's why he's hitting down here instead of up here anymore. But 4,100, 2,800 for his power ceiling is an appropriate price. Brandon Crawford in the lineup at 27-21, the veteran, 15 plate appearances, hasn't done anything yet. Last year, hit just 7 home runs in 320. Year before that, 9 in 458. Somewhere back in the past, he's got 20 home run season. 1 or 2. Now I gotta look. Why do I say things like that? Brandon Crawford hit 20 home runs twice. 1 or 2, like I said. 24 home runs back in 2021, and then 21 home runs in 2015. Several mid-teen seasons, and then, mostly like 10 to 12 on the average. So, Jose Buto's a yes, especially at that DraftKings price as an SP2, 7,100, firmly on that board. 8,000, I think you can play him on FanDuel, but probably a lower priority than a lot of pitchers. Miles Michaelis, pretty firm no for me. Mets top 5, somewhere around there, is playable on either site, but not really a super high priority. Cards, playable, but not a high priority. So really the only enthusiastic spot is the Buto side. See what's going on in the chat. Arcathelza's got a Brewers stack. Is that crazy? I don't think it's crazy. Like I said, I am on the other side of that with my Luis Eel shares. But he's walked the world. He strikes out a ton of hitters. He's got very good stuff right now. And we're going to get to him in a sec. But he walks a ton of hitters. He's going to probably give them some opportunity. I would say it definitely depends on who's in that stack, for one thing. But I don't think it's crazy. Jake Swale's looking at a Burns and Eflin kind of night. I like that. Obviously, a very, very strong combo of pitchers and some excellent matchups. Anthony Taylor just got off, missed the show. We're like 4 or 5 games in, buddy. There's plenty of show left for you. Give me my favorite home run tonight. I took one of my free passes for the year and took Aaron Judge tonight. Got to get Judgy going. But I do love that Yankee spot in general against Colin Ray. Let's do a little visit. This visit to the home run model brought to you by our pals at AceMind. AceMind.io for all your sim needs, optimizer needs for baseball, basketball, football, PGA, MMA. Presumably some more stuff coming. I'm sure they can confirm that for us. If you go to acemind.io, you can get 3 days as a free trial. And then if you use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, that gives you 20% off your first month at AceMind. And now for the home runs. How's that for a transition? So there's the board. Aaron Judge was just sitting healthily at the top, followed by Soto. I mentioned liking that Giants game. I think that's kind of frisky. There's some Pirates up on the top of the board, which we don't see a ton of, with Brian Reynolds there at 13.12. You got Jorge Soler, who's a frequent visitor to the top of the board at 14.81. Stanton, again, Yankees just drawing power against Colin Ray, who gave up a ton of home runs last year. Some of the usual suspects, but O'Neal Cruz from the Pirates also sitting there. Strongly considering them as a second stack as well. But I really like Kyle Harrison too, so I have wrestling with that one. Vladdy still clinging to life in the power index for sure. 12.85 in the home run model. Larry will be happy. We've got a lot more guys above the 10 spot, but we've got a lot more games to deal with. But today you got 25 guys, not counting who might or might not be playing, Larry. So a lot more to work with. You can see Lamont Wade's up there too. So again, that San Francisco game just kind of drawing the eye. Andrew McCutchen. How often have we seen McCutch above the line? Matty Chapman at a 9.17. Maybe an interesting spot for one-offs to keep in mind. You know, late night hammer one-offs. Tale of two different lefties here. Logan Allen, 7,100, 7,400 across sites. Very cheap, but if you want Logan Allen as your target at those prices going up against the Atlanta Braves, I question how you're going about things. And not just for DFS, like in your life, I really would like to have a talk with you about the decision-making process. 5.06 ERA, 4.23 xFIP so far for Logan Allen, a 5.31% home run rate. I mentioned not pitching as well as I was hoping for. Kind of thought he was going to be decent this year. Pitched well in spots last year, but has just been messy so far this year. 3 different games he's given up 2 home runs. It was in the first one to Oakland. Struck out just 3, gave up 2 home runs, 3 earned on 6 hits total. Next game was all right. Went 6 2/3, but now we know that it was against that Seattle team. Struck out 6, walked 3, no runs on 4 hits. That was his only clean performance of the season. Was looking at him strongly against the White Sox in his next game. Gave up one of their better games on the other side for the entire season. White Sox put 5 runs on him on 7 hits in 4 innings. He struck out 4 and walked 1 in that one. Struck out 4 in each of the last 3 games, including that one. Faced the Yanks for 5 2/3, gave up 4 runs, 2 home runs in that game, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, and then 2 home runs to the Athletics. Again, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, 3 earned runs on 5 hits over 5 1/3. So, especially for the Oakland Athletics, he's been pretty hittable this year. And the Atlanta Braves, notably better home run hitters than the Oakland Athletics, I think top to bottom. We noted that we got Ozzie Albies back in this lineup now. 4,900, 4,000 across sites. Ozzie left us with an injury a couple weeks ago, over 70 plate appearances. He had 2 home runs, 2 steals, 145 WRC+. He was slashing 317, 386, 492. Like him to get right back to business. One of the top second basemen in baseball. Ronald Acuna Jr. correctly priced at 6,500, 4,500. Just 1 home run, 11 stolen bases, though, getting on base at a 407 clip, 127 WRC+. He only had like 3 home runs through April 25th of last year, so I'm not that concerned about the power outage. .090 ISO and just a 6.2% barrel rate. It's very uncharacteristic, but I think we'll round into form and find that premium contact pretty quickly. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, best duo on the corners for power. Just 2 home runs and 3 home runs for the 2 of them so far. 168 ISO and a 216 ISO. But it's just a spot you keep going back to, and especially against Logan Allen. No concerns for Olsen, lefty-lefty. You can see he's still over the magic number. And then Riley getting to tee up a bad lefty seems like a premium spot to me. So I like both those power bats from Atlanta. Marcell Ozuna from the right side, just an absolute masher. Over 101 plate appearances, he's hitting slashing 344, 416, 678 with a 333 ISO. Creating runs 98% better than average. He's got a 17.6% barrel rate and a 55.4% hard hit rate. And he only cost $5,400 on DraftKings. 44 on FanDuel. He's the second highest priced Brave. That makes sense. He's deserved it. He's done this for like 2 seasons. The front end of the triple slash is better so far this year, but he is too cheap at $5,400. Travis d'Arnaud. Look at the premium contact for Travis d'Arnaud. Small sample over 66 plate appearances, but that's where the 5 home runs have come from. 15.2% barrel rate, 54.4% hard hits. He's always been good at getting bat on ball. As I said from day one when he stepped into the lineup, this is not a major downgrade at catcher for the Braves. They've got 2 starting caliber catchers, especially when we're home run hunting. Michael Harris, 4,800, 3,200. He's slashing 333, 363, 495, creating runs 37% better than average. Power and speed, 3 home runs and 5 stolen bases so far. Orlando Arcia, 1 home run, hit 17 last year, 302, 333, 442. Feds are here, gotta go. Oh, move your cars, assholes. I don't know how much of that you guys can hear. It's like the world is ending outside. There's an intersection like right over there. My building's like the 3rd one in. So if people don't move their cars, it's a not crazy busy intersection, but if people don't move out of the way of these ambulances and stuff. And there's a hospital a few blocks down that way, so there's just constantly back and forth. So anyway, the Braves are stackable top to bottom. Orlando Arcia is a very affordable shortstop, and he's never popular enough, and he's an excellent hitter, got some power, contributes to this team in a lot of ways, and he's 4,200, 2,900, easy to get to, great wraparound option. Adam Duvall for 36.27. I was going to say in a pinch, but not even in a pinch, just as a good power option. It just sucks losing a couple plate appearance or an opportunity at an additional plate appearance down the lineup at 36.27. But if this team's just rolling plate appearances over, he's going to see his opportunities. Good shot at a home run for him, too. And then Chris Sale, the lefty that's doing well, 27.6% strikeout rate, a 4.38 ERA, a 2.92 xFIP, good walk rate, hasn't allowed much in terms of premium contact. A couple of home runs allowed, but excellent looking on Stuff Plus. It's generating a 14.1% swinging strike rate and has a 33.2% CSW. So he's basically been right on point. 7 strikeouts and 7 innings pitched, more importantly, in each of the last 2. He gave up 5 earned runs against Miami at Miami 2 starts back, but went 7 and struck out 7. So you clean up at least some of that. He gave up a home run in each of the last 2 games. Most recent one was against Texas. Gave up a homer, struck out 7, gave up 3 earned runs on 5 hits. Hasn't pitched totally clean, but the fact that he pitched into the 6th inning in both of his first 2 starts and then went 7 in each of the last 2, definitely encouraging. You just get a good low strikeout quality Guardians lineup on the other side. They've been really good for run creation and sequencing this year. They've got a little bit of power. They've got a little bit of speed. So it, again, like I said at the top of the show, it's not really a spot where I'm endorsing the Guardians saying like, oh, they're going to get out there, do their thing and rack up like 8 runs even if they don't hit for power. I think maybe they put a couple runs on them. 2 to 4 runs, 2 to 5 runs. He probably goes 7 innings. It's the strikeout total and whether or not he's able to claw back any of those runs by pitching just clean innings and finding some strikeouts that I question. If he goes 7 but gives you 4 strikeouts and 3 earned runs with a home run and some hits allowed and everything, not a great start at 9,800, 9,300. I think he's got to be really sharp here. But he's got that capability, obviously. He's, over the last 10 years, one of the better strikeout pitchers when he's healthy in all of baseball. I don't think it leads me to wanting to roster any of the Guardians here. We've got their confirmed lineup too. Hey, it's 4:20, man. I was preparing to look down and see like 5:30 and wish everybody luck on the basketball slate, but we're not that far behind yet. So the Guardians confirm lineup: Stephen Kwan, Tyler Freeman, Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, David Fry, Ramon Laureano. 20.8% strikeout rate, but the top end of the lineup, the top 4 hitters, 12.7% so far this year. Last year, 13.2%. It's an extremely low strikeout team. And a lot of these guys, they can draw walks, but they don't draw double-digit walks. Ramirez did last year, but just 1.9% this year. So what does that equal? Balls in play. So you can definitely see a track to some hits against and maybe some extended innings, and maybe we don't get 7 out of Sale. But again, I still don't think that really leads us to a big day for the Guardians. Kwan's been good at a leadoff spot, 346, 382. As long as he's doing that, everything else will be fine. 148 WRC plus so far this season. Just base hits and get on base. That's his job. Low strikeout guy. Doesn't draw a ton of walks. If he ever pushed the walk rate up, it would help him. 9.7 last year was all right. Just 5.5 this year. But there's no real reason he shouldn't be into the double digits for walks. Light hitter otherwise. He does have 2 home runs, but just a 2.2% barrel rate, 16.1% hard hits. Freeman, 221, 308, 397, does have 3 homers, 3 steals, 109 WRC plus. Not excellent out of that 2 spot, but very cheap at 2,900, 2,800. Discounted at second base and third base on FanDuel. Probably a better spot here than at 29 is just like another outfielder. Jose Ramirez is a star, 6,000, 3,900. He's got 5 homers, 3 steals, a 212 ISO, 109 WRC plus. Kind of pulled that line together over the last couple of weeks. Josh Naylor, 6 home runs on the season, 295, 366, 557. He's creating runs 61% better than average. David Fry has been very good over 50 plate appearances, 67% better than average for runs, slashing 286, 460, 457 in the tiny sample. But putting decent bat on ball, he was pretty good for barrels in a pretty small sample, I think, last year. 113 plate appearances last year. Led to 4 home runs. So just another option for cheap. He's got catcher eligibility on the FanDuel slate. Catcher first base doesn't really matter. Like, what's honestly the point of giving somebody that eligibility on FanDuel? What difference does it make? Those are the same, right? I mean, I guess you could put him at first. Oh, no, because it's catcher first, and then it's, whatever. What I'm saying is that's dumb eligibility. On DraftKings, you get 2 different first basemen with Fry and Naylor, so they're positionally blocked. That's not helpful to anybody. Gabe Arias, 3,800, 2,800. He's got quad position eligibility on FanDuel, which is great. 280, 308, 440 out of the gate this year. 118 WRC plus for him. Home run, a steal. He was fairly productive, over 345 plate appearances for DFS anyway, with 10 home runs last year. Not great for runs or anything else. Austin Hedges, backup catcher. No real power or anything to speak of over time. Brian Rocchio just mostly here for defense at shortstop. So the Guardians stack feels thin given the matchup, and they're again, we'd be looking for station to station baseball, but it might limit the ceiling for Chris Sale. I do think Chris Sale's a yes, but it comes with a little bit of an asterisk, which is represented by a little bit lower of a projection than some of the other aces on the board. The Braves bats are a big yes against Logan Allen. I think you get plenty of power upside from them, and Logan Allen is a big no against the Braves. We're about halfway through. Lineups for this game. Is there in a completely different order on this site for some reason? So this is the game with some weather in it. We do have the White Sox lineup. So keep an eye on the skies here, but Zach Eflin looks like a pretty dynamite option against the worst team in baseball. 3.68 ERA so far this year, 3.27 xFIP for Eflin, a 21.9% strikeout rate, over 29 and a third in 5 starts. Hasn't walked anybody, 1.7% walk rate so far. That is literally 2 walks all season in 5 starts. Hasn't walked anyone in 3 games. The first 4 starts, he struck out 5 exactly in each of those starts. 5 2/3, gave up 6 earned in the first game against Toronto. That was a bad one. And then 5 innings against LA in his third game, gave up 5 runs. That was a bad one. The other starts, just 1 earned, over 6 1/3 against Texas. Struck out 5, walked 1, allowed 5 hits. Against the Angels in a home start, 6 1/3. Struck out 5, walked 0, 6 hits, no runs. Last start against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Faced 21 Yankees, gave up 3 hits, struck out 6, walked 0, and no runs. So he's been mostly on point. Couple of blips, but by and large, pitching pretty well. The strikeouts are down year over year. The swinging strikes are a little bit down. CSW is a little bit down. But I think there's good reason to expect him to be able to get back on track here against the White Sox. Looks like Tommy Pham is in the lineup for the White Sox. Don't think he's on either slate because we're not getting pricing for anything. But that's a real hitter. Tommy Pham is a former 2020 type. It does add a veteran bat to this lineup, but making his season debut. I can't imagine he's, really up to game speed or anything with his timing. So I'm not really going to be threatened or unwind any of my enthusiasm about Zach Eflin just because Tommy Pham is here now. 9,000 for Eflin, 95 on FanDuel. He projects out as the second highest pitcher of the day. Getting him at the discount compared to Corbin Burns at the top, compared to Nola and Gallen. Probably a higher ceiling than like a Luis Gil or an Evaldi, a Bailey Ober, who are all going to be fairly popular at lower prices. I do think you have a better true ceiling for Zach Eflin for the additional money. So if you're trying to make that decision, like do I go down to 88 for Evaldi or can I find another $700, pay for a cheaper second baseman or whatever, and get to Eflin at 95? I would say that's worth doing in some cases. There is a 4-point gap there projection-wise. Excellent shot at booking both bonuses on the FanDuel slate, the win bonus on DraftKings. So I think this is a pretty killer spot. You just, knock on wood, the weather holds off. It seems like, again, Roth was getting more optimistic about that. On the White Sox side, Chris Flexen threw 6 1/3 innings against Kansas City in his second start back on April 6th. Gave up 3 earned on 6 hits, struck out 4, walked 2. That was his best start, probably. Didn't start the last 2, pitched in bulk relief the last 2. At Philadelphia, went 4 innings. That was actually pretty good. Faced 13 hitters, gave up 1 hit, struck out 4. 2 1/3 in bulk relief against Minnesota on the 22nd. 1 hit, 1 home run, struck out 0, faced 9 hitters. I can't imagine we're getting much depth out of Chris Flexen. I can't really. I'm actually starting to think these projections might be an inning high for him. But a lot of good reasons to take a look at the Rays, I think. Don't have their lineup in yet. They haven't been the runaway Rays that they were last year, starting the season. They haven't been completely bad. They've got some very good options for WRC Plus production so far this year. But they have scuffling Yandy Diaz at the top of the lineup. He was just dynamite from wire to wire last season to carry a lot of this team. But when we were looking at the end of April with this team last year, everybody was like in the 160s, 170s for WRC Plus or higher. So not the same start, but a lot of the same hitters. Randy Arozarena, still a star. Only 2,800 for Arozarena against Chris Flexen is kind of interesting on FanDuel. 3 home runs, 4 stolen bases, just a 105 ISO, a 46 WRC plus, another culprit for their lousy start. 41.5% hard hits, striking out way too much, not drawing that many walks, but especially here with that price as low as it is, that's not uninteresting. Richie Palacios, 2 home runs, a stolen base in 64 plate appearances, a 143 WRC plus for him. Isaac Paredes has been very interesting, 6 home runs. He hit a ton of home runs last year, 31 homers in 571 plate appearances. Had a 238 ISO this year, a 239 ISO so far, creating runs 61% better than average. Ahmed Rosario has been excellent so far this year. 341, 349, 494, a 149 WRC plus, 2 homers, 3 steals. Doing his thing. Kind of fulfilling his destiny as a once-upon-a-time high-end prospect. I said it day one when he was on this team. It was an interesting landing spot for him, and it might completely fall apart. We've seen hot Aprils before, but it's a good start to the season. He's got a 47.3% hard hit rate so far. It's been very interesting. Still only cost $2,900 at shortstop on FanDuel, $4,500 at second base or in the outfield on DraftKings. Howard Ramirez for $3,700, $2,700. Not great so far this year, 63 WRC plus, very low ISO. He's got 1 home run, 3 steals, just a 260 on base. But he's a good line drive hitter over time. Last year, 313, 353, 460. Came up with 12 home runs, but he's more of just a run generation type guy. Somebody who can keep the ball moving, can bring in runners that have gotten on, can help with sequencing based on being a line drive hitter. So he's another guy kind of needs to get things going for this team, but he's very cheap for his talent. Ben Rortvedt is like a backup catcher talent. Curtis Mead hasn't done much yet this year. 1 home run, 2 steals in his 72 plate appearances. He's very cheap with multi-position on FanDuel. And then Jose Caballero has a little bit of pop, little bit of speed, 2 homers, 9 steals. Fits in well with the team theme. 272, 302 with the front end of the triple slash, but is creating runs 16% better than average. So maybe you use Caballero as a wraparound back up to the quality at the top. But again, a couple of these guys really struggling. The White Sox, it's like what I said about the A's, but way worse. Right, where I was saying, like, you don't necessarily want to target Corbin Burns anyway, but, like, if you're bound and determined to be contrarian, at least they're cheap, and there are a few interesting hitters. This team doesn't even really have the interesting hitters outside of maybe Eloy Jimenez. And he's at the Mendoza line over 50 plate appearances. 200, 280, 333, and 80 WRC+, going up against a good pitcher with nothing really to support him in the lineup. It's just a bad team. It's 100% contrarian. You can roster any of these hitters in a group, and they will each be sub 5% owned. And most of the time, you're going to be congratulating yourself at the end of the night on having booked like 6 total fantasy points from these guys. You will see it a couple of times win a slate. I'm not saying it won't. There will be games where this team goes off for 10 runs just because that's baseball. Does it make sense to try and bullseye that every single day, especially when they're facing good pitching? Not really. Yeah, you have to make those plays frequently for the math to really work out, and you have to be contrarian with consistency. That doesn't mean you can't pick your spots. So don't really like it on the White Sox side for anything. Zach Eflin's a big yes. The Rays bats are like a mid-level yes. If they were not struggling as badly as they were with some of their key hitters, it would be a more interesting spot. But I do think you could get some Rays. The Reds and the Rangers. We've got both these lineups. How about that? Ellie De La Cruz, huh? On track for a better season than what Acuna had last year. Obviously, I don't really think that we're going to get there. It's fun to talk about at this point of the season. Hell, at this point of last year, we were talking about whether Esteury Ruiz was going to steal 100 bases and whether Luis Arraez was going to hit 400. Neither of those things happened. Rangers. Graham Ashcraft, Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi projects out pretty well. It's a really free-swinging bunch of Reds. Even a player like Ellie, one of his big hiccups is he comes with a 30+% strikeout rate, 30.7 so far this year. He's also really improved some of his decision making early on this season. He's drawing walks at a 14.9% clip so far. He's getting on base at a 416 rate. He's got 15 stolen bases. He's got 7 home runs, 306, 416, 635, 329 ISO, 182 WRC+. He is absolutely so far fulfilling his destiny as one of the best players in baseball and possibly the most exciting. Just fun to watch. 5,900, 4,500. Fun to watch doesn't buy you any fantasy points, unfortunately. Well, it kind of does, I guess, but you know what I mean. Will Benson out of the top spot is cheap. Encarnacion Strand is very cheap. Spencer Steer is reasonably priced, I guess, for the production. So it's not impossible to get Ellie if you want to get to that spot. It's just you're going up against a pretty good pitcher in Eovaldi. Eovaldi's not ace, maybe like 2 tiers down from ace, but still a good, if he's your second starter on a good team, you're pretty happy about it. Maybe your third. 2 starts this season with 8 strikeouts. Capable of pitching deep into a game. He's worked into the 6th inning in every one of his 5 starts this year. 6 innings in the first start, gave up 2 earned. 7 innings clean against the Rays in his second start, struck out 8 in that one. 1 earned run against Oakland, struck out 8 over 5 2/3. Really one rough start. Came at Houston, gave up 5 earned on 8 hits, walked 2, gave up 2 home runs, and only struck out 3. The most recent start at Atlanta, 3 earned runs, walked 6. That's the problem. Managed to strike out 6 and walk 6 while giving up 5 hits and still pitched 5 1/3. That's impressive just based on what that pitch count must have been. You can see the innings, 30 innings and 5 starts. So fairly reliable to at least chase the quality start on FanDuel, chase the win. Definitely some upside for strikeouts. He's got a 23% strikeout rate this year so far. Last year, 22.9. Year before that, 22.4. So we're basically in line already. 9.8% walk is a little bit up from last year. It's way up from 2 years ago. This was a smaller sample than than the 2023 stats. But we know over time Eovaldi is an effective, upper middle of the road type pitcher. You can see his stuff plus is almost exactly at league average. 3.30 ERA with a 4.06 xFIP. I would take my shares of Eovaldi, but I would balance it with shares of Reds on the other side. I just think he's effectively priced for where he projects what the strikeout ceiling could look like. So he's in play. Graham Ashcraft on the other side, I'm going back and forth with this one. On FanDuel, where he projects, I don't think is worth it at all. At 8,000, I think there's just other value plays that look better, that project better, that aren't facing the Texas Rangers on the other side, that are just better pitchers. I don't think Ashcraft is necessarily bad. He's gone 4 starts, only went 5 in his last start, gave up 5 earned to the Angels, struck out 4, walked 3. He also gave up 5 earned and 6 total runs on 9 hits to the Brewers earlier in the year on the 8th, struck out 6, walked 1 in that one. In between those, against the White Sox, 5 2/3, struck out 8, walked 2, 1 earned, one other run on 5 hits. He's been mediocre, not bad. 5.24 ERA, but a 3.26 xFIP is very good. 12% swinging strike rate is very good. 23.5% strikeout rate is pretty good. He's given up 4 home runs total in the 4 games. 1 clean game came against the White Sox, but a home run to the Angels, 1 to the Brewers, and 2 to the Phillies in the first game of the year. So I don't think we're getting there. I don't think that price is low enough on DraftKings. I certainly don't like it on FanDuel at 89. But maybe a reason to pause on the Rangers side. Not consider them quite as high end as they might be. And he's an okay pitcher. I do think they can hang some runs on him for sure, and it could get carried away very quickly. But he's not as soft as some of the other pitchers on the board. You can absolutely grab stacks of Rangers, but let's do the Reds first. I just went through it quick before talking about some of those guys at the top, but continuing on from Ellie. Spencer Steer at 54 with first base and outfield, just outfield on FanDuel. 3 home runs, 5 steals, a 127 WRC+. Decent start to the season, was tearing the cover off the ball the first couple of weeks. Encarnacion Strand, a bad start to the season. Just 200, 220, 326 is a terrible triple slash. Dropped him down to the cleanup spot, hopefully to get him going. But we're really just looking for power from him. He's been squaring the ball up a little bit. Not quite as much as last year. But it's early yet, and his price is way down. So if you're rostering Reds, I do think Encarnacion Strand should be a part of your plans. Stevenson, mostly skippable as a catcher, but at least he's cheap. So if you're playing on DraftKings, maybe you work him into a few if you're building a ton of Red stacks. 43.29 for Jonathan India. He's been ugly out of the gate so far this year. 58 WRC+, well below the Mendoza line, just a 311 on base. 2 stolen bases, no power over 90 plate appearances. Jeimer Candelario at 3,500, 2,800, also well below the Mendoza. Sub 300 on base, just 2 home runs. Hasn't really done anything in terms of premium contact. Santiago Espinal, Stuart Fairchild. It's a pretty weak, bottom handful of hitters here. Top 4 for the Reds if you want to stack Reds, and then pick your favorite guy after that. On the Rangers side, you do get underpriced talent at the top of the board. Semien at 5,200 continues to be way too cheap on DraftKings for my liking. 3,900 I think is fair, but he could easily be a $4,000 second baseman on FanDuel. 4 home runs, a stolen base, creating runs 19% better than average. And this is not a terrible start, but kind of a cool start for who Marcus Semien is. Corey Seager has not been good so far, but he's deeply discounted. 3,400 on FanDuel. 58, it's the opposite situation on DraftKings. He's down a few $100. But 34 is way cheap on FanDuel, and he's going to bounce back. I'm not worried about Corey Seager. Still just striking out 14.7% of the time, walking 11.8%. He's got 1 home run, hasn't really squared the ball up, hasn't hit for a ton of power yet, but we'll get there. Nathaniel Lowe, good lefty first base option, very cheap across sites, 3,800, 2,700, just getting back into the swing of things. 294, 400, 529 with 70% better than average WRC+, over 20 plate appearances. Last year, 17 homers in 724. Year before, 27 homers in 645, while slashing 302, 358, 492, creating runs 43% better than average. Nathaniel Lowe's a good hitter. The sites kind of forgot that, so take advantage while he's cheap. Adolis Garcia, 5,300, too cheap on DraftKings.
He's got 7 home runs and 4 stolen bases at 289 ISO. He's created runs 63% better than average. He's slashing 299, 346, 588. It's kind of like Ozuna. Like, why isn't he more expensive right now? 53. It's a nice, good, fair price. But why is Corey Seager 58 and he's 53? Semion's 52. Pricing doesn't make sense. 4,300, 3,200 for Evan Carter, who's scuffling along. He does have 4 home runs, a stolen base. He's creating runs above average. He's got a 232 ISO, just a 207, 305 on the front of the triple slash. I expect that to improve, though. Kid seems like a good hitter. Josh Smith, 292, 393, 417, getting it done in the fill-in role. Not a tremendous bat, but playable at 33-27. Like him a lot better for 27 with triple position on FanDuel than just at third base on DraftKings. Wyatt Langford still looking for that first home run. 104 plate appearances, hasn't gotten one yet. He'll get there. I think he's definitely still playable at 37-27. 88 WRC plus. We're not that tragically below the mark. 253, okay at the front end. 337, not bad in terms of the on base. Just really hasn't squared anything yet. 20.2% strikeout rate is fine. 10.6% walk rate is good. Another player. I don't think we're that far off for Wyatt Langford for the breakout. Jonah Heim, catcher power for cheap, just late in the lineup, 3,900. He's got 3 home runs and 83 plate appearances. Definitely capable to hit one out against Graham Ashcraft. Leody Taveras, 200, 264, 275 to start the year. Pretty weak start for Leody. But the Rangers are pretty stackable through that part of the lineup, and then there's some good pieces and parts down here. Evaldi, yes, but like, a mid-range option. Good, decent mid-range option with some strikeout upside. But the Reds bats, I would hedge with some Reds bats on the other side of that. Rangers bats, definitely a yes against Graham Ashcraft, and I just don't think the prices are right for Ashcraft, so I wouldn't go there. Finally, up to the Yankees game at least. Man, this is a big slate. Appreciate you guys hanging out, listening to the sounds of my voice talk through this whole thing. Anthony Taylor, why does FanDuel have so many players at first and catcher that are good? Yeah, I mean, there are several just good catchers, and first base is traditionally a big offensive spot. But yeah, there's a lot of guys with some questionable eligibility. Rain is steady. Anthony Taylor doesn't think the game's playing. Was it officially canceled, or are you just speculating there? Let's keep... I don't see anything about it being officially PPD, so let's keep those type of statements, stuff like that, to like, I don't think the game's going to play, just to avoid confusing anyone, me most in particular. Just looking at some of the chats. Dennis and Larry making fun of FanDuel. Larry's asking, why isn't Tampa Bay higher in the top stack? Just because of some of how the projection average works there, and then if I don't deliberately move them up, they wouldn't have moved them up, or they would be a little bit low ranked. Where are they? Where are they at? Let me see. That's a pretty reasonable spot, Larry. I got them 11 out of 26 teams. For as bad as they've been, it's a great spot going up against Chris Flexen, but I was looking down further down the list. I wasn't expecting him to be as high as 11. I don't think that's wrong. Who would you rank behind them? Let me put it that way, Larry. And as you said to me, not trying to call you out anything, just curious as to how you might be viewing it. Out of the teams that I have ahead of them, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Yankees, the Rangers, the Reds, the Phillies, the Orioles, the Red Sox, the Diamondbacks, and the Blue Jays, which of those teams would you move them ahead of? I could see the Blue Jays, sure, but that's just one spot. Gavin Stone, Chris Flexen, similar type matchups. I like the Diamondbacks better against Emerson Hancock, I think. I could see moving Boston down against Shota Imanaga. Giving Boston a little bit of credit for their value and their hitting ability there. Wouldn't put the Orioles behind them. The Phillies I wouldn't put behind them against Musgrove. The Reds, only if you're looking at the downside. I prefer to see the upside of the Reds. The Rangers against Ashcraft, no. The Yankees against Colin Ray, definitely not. The Braves against Logan Allen, definitely not. And the Dodgers against Chris Bassett, definitely not. I actually was looking at it the other way, in that San Francisco and Pittsburgh are the next two teams, 12 and 13, and I actually, again, like that game. Could kind of move those two up. But I wouldn't move too many. The other one I would maybe consider moving above them would be probably Cleveland, but it's against Chris Sale, and as I've talked about, it's not all that appealing. I think that 11 spot is like right in line. I kind of like that one. Michael Knack emailed my Brewers the other day urging them to sign Trevor Bauer. Who couldn't use him? I don't know, ladies in the Milwaukee area who don't like being punched in the face. Allegedly. Dennis says this is why you need a host. I talk too much to have a host, though. That's the problem. Yankees, Brewers. So let's talk Colin Ray. Looks like a target for Yankees bats to me. 14.9% strikeout rate so far this year. An 84 stuff plus rating, a 2.08 ERA, a 4.47 xFIP. Hasn't given up a ton of power so far this year in his 4 starts. Allowed 2 home runs to the Orioles. He faced the Mets, the Mariners, and the Cardinals otherwise. The Cards and the Mariners are scuffling badly. The Mets I was actually looking at. I think I had them that day, and I was looking at them for some home run upside. But I'd say the most comparable opponent is those Orioles, who hit two home runs against him. Only scored 3, struck out 6 times. He went 5 2/3 in that game. But I think Ray we're just lining up, and you can see in the home run model, a lot of power shining through from the Yanks. That's partly from last year. He had allowed a 43% hard hit rate, 90.4 miles an hour of exit velo on the average, and a 4.45% home run rate over his 124 2/3 innings in his 22 starts. He had a 4.55 ERA and a 4.31 xFIP. League averages strikeout rates, 10.2% swinging strikes, 28% CSW. Had a couple effective starts mixed in there as well. Wouldn't knock me out of my chair if he went out and pitched 5 okay innings, gave up maybe 1 home run and 2 or 3 runs and struck out 6 or 7 or 5 or 6. But I think the weight of expectation is more on the Yankee side. I think that's where a lot of DFS value is coming from. I think we're getting Aaron Judge below 4,000 on FanDuel. 3,800 for Judge is pretty dynamite. I don't care that he's in this form. I'll just keep buying. I know who Aaron Judge is. Let the price go down. It's fine. Juan Soto, 6,200, 4,300. He's been spectacular. 6 home runs, a stolen base, 316, 430, 561, a 245 ISO. He's got a 15.41 in the home run model. Judgy leading the entire day at 17.86. You also get Stanton at 14. He's got 5 homers, but just 222, 276, 457 in the triple slash. 235 ISO, 12% better than average creating runs, obliterating baseballs when he makes contact with them. I have no issues with Stanton shares. I don't care that he's hitting for a bad batting average. I wish he was getting on base a little bit more. I would love to see him hit 250, but I'll take what I can get while he's healthy. 4,600, 3,000 for his power upside against this pitcher is pretty tremendous. Rizzo, 3,900, 2,900 at first base. Discounted. Lefty, he's up to 3 home runs. He's pulled the triple slash together a little bit over the last few days. He's up to league average for WRC+. Still not really putting bat on ball all that effectively, striking out a little bit. That's basically in line with who he's been, though. Glaber hasn't really gotten things together yet. 202, 296, 223. Just a 62 WRC+. Still no homers. Not a great start to the year for Glaber at second base. 4,126. He was dynamite last year. Still like him for the turn, but no questions, really. Just waiting. Waiting patiently. Verdugo at 34-28. He's playable in Yankee stacks, but he's never going to be a priority. A light hitter, capable of driving the ball from time to time, creating runs, but kind of low end. Ozzy Cabrera has been productive, but we're down to 263, 294, 425. I think it's very quickly turning back into a pumpkin. 3,900, 2,900 across sites. It's not like you're even getting him all that cheap. There are more interesting multi-position guys than sticking him in the outfield or at third base. So I don't love it, but he's been a little bit productive to start the year. Austin Wells, if that's the catcher, 3,124. He is the better of the two hitters at catcher for the Yankees, but not by much so far this year. And it might be Trevino. I didn't bother to check if we had that lineup in. Doesn't look like we do. Luis Gil, mentioned a couple times. He's in my placeholder right now. Got to think he's going to get that start. For me, I mean, I know he's getting the start for the Yankees. Last time out against the Rays, 5 2/3, struck out 9, walked 3, give up 1 unearned run on 2 hits, faced 23 hitters. The game before that at Toronto, struck out 6, walked a whopping 7 in that game. That's where some of the high walk rate comes from. But still managed to go 5, faced 23 hitters, 3 earned runs on 3 hits, 8 strikeouts with 4 walks against the same Blue Jays in the game before that. Went 4 1/3, just 2 earned runs in that one on 2 hits. Went 4 2/3 against the Diamondbacks in his first start, just 1 earned run on 1 hit, struck out 6, walked 3. So there's a little bit of up, there's a little bit of down with Luis Gil so far. But I like the matchup for him. This projected version of the Brewers lineup has a 25.3% strikeout rate so far this year, and the guys who were major leaguers last year had a 24.4. That's including the 16.6 from Sal Frelick. A couple of the guys who are in this lineup now, like Oliver Dunn, is striking out at a 35.6. Jackson Chourio, for all his talent, is slashing 213, 264 on the front end, creating runs 23% worse than average and striking out 34% of the time. I think this is a very gettable spot for Luis Gil. I was actually expecting him to be a lot more expensive. I figured he would have crept into the 9s on FanDuel. 78 on DraftKings is cheap. Probably my top bargain pitcher. I think the board reflected that. This is a really interesting spot on DraftKings, but it's going to be very popular. I think it might be more popular than this. I'm not sure. But for the price difference, I suspect it would. Luis Gil's definitely got strikeout upside here. Got to clean up the walks. 20.2% walk rate over 19 2/3 in 4 starts is not going to get it done. That's just problematic. Like I said, one of those came from a 7-walk game against the Blue Jays, but a 3-walk game, 4-walk game, 3-walk game. It drives the pitch count up. It shortens the starts. The fact that he went 5 and then he went 5 2/3 in the last game encourages me toward the potential for a 6-inning quality start. But Boone does have a fairly notorious quick hook as well, especially with pitchers like this, especially if he walks 2 guys in the, to start the 6th inning, strikes out 1, walks 2, and then he's in trouble. Boone's going to the pen there, and you're not getting that quality start. So it comes with a little bit of a warning on that, but he's correctly priced for that with the strikeout ceiling that he's got. So I really like Luis Gil, and then on DraftKings at 78, I think you just tie him to several different good pitchers in different lineups and roll with it. I do think you could grab some Brewers on the other side. Somebody asked about it before, but you can see, not tremendous marks in the home run model. Gil has only given up a 21.6% hard hit rate, 86.5 miles an hour of exit velo, 0 home runs so far against him. Very compelling numbers in terms of the premium contact. Has not allowed a barrel yet this year. You can see how much Stuff Plus likes him in the small sample. Just got to wrangle this. Just got to stop being quite so all over the place. So it does have a limiting impact on these numbers, but that doesn't make him invulnerable to the home run. Jake Bauers could get him. Rhys Hoskins could certainly get him. He leads the team at 5.4. He's got a 5 home run total so far this season. He's even stolen a base, creating runs 15% better than average. He's also striking out at a 20.6% clip. Not a bad number. Sal Frelick to start things off, kind of a light hitter, needs to get on base and help create runs with his legs. 92 WRC plus so far, but a 354 on base. Hasn't been bad in that leadoff role. William Contreras, one of the top catchers in baseball, definitely a guy to keep in mind for catcher one-offs. He's expensive also, like I was saying about Adley Rutschman. I think they're the same price. You're paying a premium, but you're getting one of the best hitting catchers at his position. You can see he's a $4,100 hitter on FanDuel. That's star caliber play. 208 ISO, 183 WRC plus for him over 112 plate appearances. Willy Adames does have power upside, 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases, down to 277, 370, 436, but that's still, especially for him, a very good triple slash. Playable in stacks, not a guy to really go out of your way for in other circumstances. Jake Bauers, cheap lefty pop, 2,900, 3,100 across sites. Just one home run and a stolen base this year. Good premium contact in a small sample, I want to say, last year. 272 plate appearances. That's pretty decent. Last year, that was 18.7% barrels and 48% hard hits out of Jake Bauers over those 272 plate appearances. 12 home runs resulted from that, but everything else was pretty lousy. ISO was good at 211, but 11% worse than average for run creation. Pretty weak triple slash. Hoskins, again, 5 home runs on the season so far. Best mark in the home run model. Just 3,146, positionally blocked with Bauers on DraftKings. Oliver Dunn is cheap, but cheap for a reason. Blake Perkins, off to a pretty decent start. 71 plate appearances, 322, 437, 475. Creating runs 60% better than average. 2 homers, 2 steals. Switch hitter, who was once upon a time a second-round pick and a decent prospect. Could be interesting if he keeps this up. Somebody to keep in mind for cheap shares if you're building a bunch of Brewer stacks. Bryce Turang, similar. 12 stolen bases, off to a decent start as well. 35% better than average for run creation. Some of their better players are down toward the bottom of the lineup here. And then Churio, the star in waiting, one day. 4 home runs, 4 steals. Incredibly good raw talent, but hasn't really put it together at the major league level yet. Too many strikeouts, no average, no on base. Needs to improve across the board to stick at this level. Louis Seal's a big yes, especially for as a value with a lot of upside, and the Yankees bats are a pretty big yes. Brewers bats playable in small doses against heel, particularly as like a hedge position. Twins and Angels. Just a couple games to go. Oh, that Brewers lineup got confirmed while I was talking. Frila Contreras, Damas, Hoskins hitting 4th. Blake Perkins moves up the lineup to hit 5th. That's a really good spot for Blake Perkins. Gary Sanchez in the lineup hitting 6th. Love Gary. We've talked about him before. Another candidate for a home run and a spoiler for Louis Seal's day. So Perkins, a little bit of a improvement pushing up the lineup. And then Gary Sanchez, so far this year, 16.1% barrels, 45.2% hard hits in his 39 plate appearances. He's got 3 home runs. That's very Gary Sanchez-esque. 270 ISO, but everything else sucks. 189, 231, 459. You're just home run hunting if you roster Gary. 4.65 in the home run model puts him 4th on the team behind 2 4.88s and the 5.61 now for Rhys Hoskins. He goes up a little bit, moving up by a spot. Churio still in the same spot. Joey Ortiz in the bottom of the lineup. Turang down there as well. Sanchez is the most interesting change that brings about. All right. Actually, wait a minute. Contreras is in there. Just wanted to make sure. Patrick Sandoval, 23.3% strikeouts, but a 13.6% walk rate. Hasn't really allowed anything in terms of premium contact or home run power. 6.75 ERA, though, but a 4.23 xFIP under that. Whip is high because the walk rate is so high. 11.8% swinging strike rate. Going up against a Twins team that's got enough strikeouts in it to justify maybe a little bit of loose interest for an okay, middle of the road projection. 7,200 on both sites. Gets you here. That's right about the middle of the board. I think he's in play, if not around the cut line for shares. It's not the worst option in the world. The Twins do have some power. 4 home runs so far this season for Ryan Jeffers. Byron Buxton just has 1, but he's pulled himself together with some doubles, and the triple slash is coming around. The run creation marks are coming around. Manny Margot hits lefties a little bit. He's not a full-time player. Hasn't been good so far this season. Jose Miranda. Let me make sure we don't have this lineup while I'm talking about it. Doesn't look like. Bruce Cubs. Nope. Jose Miranda, good a couple years ago, still very cheap at 2,800, 2,300. Carlos Santana, 2,900, 2,300 has been pretty bad. 1 home run this season. Got on the board via correlated scoring the other day. Austin Martin, Christian Vasquez, and then our 2 multi-position cheapo guys down the bottom of the lineup. It's a pretty weak Twins team if this is the lineup that we get. So, maybe a little bit of encouragement there for Patrick Sandoval. Definitely gettable for strikeouts. Not a ton of walk rate, not a ton of on-base skill. 270 collective on base for the 9-man lineup so far this year. Not that many home runs. Nobody above 4. Last year, for the guys who were in the majors, that collective on base was 311. So it's not a ton of threat of sequencing from this version of this lineup. Just maybe the odd power that could ruin his day. But again, he hasn't really given up anything so far this year in 5 starts. Last year, just a 1.84% home run rate with terrific hard hit and exit velo numbers. Year before, if you're looking for consistency, 1.25% home run rate with 33% hard hits, 87 miles an hour of exit velo. This is just who Patrick Sandoval is. So, just comes down to a matter of whether or not he's in a matchup where he can find some strikeouts, manage not to walk the world and just give them free opportunities. The Twins are cheap. They're probably not going to be that popular. They've got some multi-position guys. I don't think they're off the board, but they're definitely not a high priority stack. On the Angels side of things, they're going up against Bailey Ober, who again is going to be really popular on DraftKings. At 6,800, I can't see how he's not going to be. Facing an Angels team that is essentially Mike Trout and a bunch of guys. Maybe Taylor Ward deserves a little bit of recognition there as well. But really, this is a low-end Angels team. 25% strikeout rate for this projected lineup. Ober sitting at a 22.7% strikeout rate over 18 and a third in 4 starts. A 4.91 ERA, a 4.27 xFIP. He's given up a little bit of power, some premium contact. He's generating an okay swinging strike rate. The whip isn't bad. The walk rate is right in line with where you'd want it. It really amounts to one bad start for Bailey Ober. Back on the 31st, and I'm pretty sure we played him this day. I know I recommended him this day. Facing the Royals at Kansas City, first start of the year on the 31st, he gave up 8 earned runs in an inning and a third. Struck out 1, walked 1, gave up 3 home runs. Those are the only 3 home runs he's given up all year. 5 innings in the next start against the Dodgers, just one earned run on 3 hits. Struck out 7 Dodgers, which is difficult to do. Walked 2, very good start there. 6 innings in each of his last 2 starts. Clean game facing 21 Tigers in Detroit. Just struck out 3, not a high-end DFS performance, but a quality start over 6 innings. No earned runs, 3 hits. 6 strikeouts against Detroit in a home start in the next one. Also went 6 in that one, gave up just 2 hits, 1 earned run, struck out 6. So 2 very effective back-to-back starts, and then a pretty good one against the Dodgers over 5 in the second start of the year. We're going to get bad games from time to time from Bailey Ober. That's kind of been his thing over time. A couple of really good ones and then one that burns you. I think we're still on track for a good one here. So I like the spot. It's just about the popularity on DraftKings. I think at 85 on FanDuel, he'll be rostered, but I don't think at like crazy high levels. It's just I'm a little bit more inclined to go to Luis Hill for a little bit more strikeout upside for $100 less. But Ober's right in that same territory. So I think he's in play on both sites. If I want to roster Angels, it's Mike Trout. Mike Trout leads the league with 10 home runs. Yeah, he's slashing 237, 321, 598. Who cares about the front end of the triple slash when we're talking Mike Trout at this point? 361 ISO, a 58 WRC plus. Strikes out just 22% of the time, walks 10.1%, 19.2% barrel rate so far. He's been excellent. Looking really good out there. He's even stolen 5 bases. Nolan Shanuel, 203, 300, 246. 65 WRC plus, no power to speak of. Hasn't been good at all. Taylor Ward does have 7 home runs, 2 steals, a 248 ISO, a 138 WRC plus. He's been pretty effective. Strikes out at a 20% rate, doesn't really walk, puts the ball in play, and hits it with authority. Taylor Ward would probably be number 2 into my stack. Then maybe Miguel Sano. He's got a home run on the board, 271, 362, 373 over 69 plate appearances. Was basically out of baseball, but he's back, and he's crushing the ball when he makes contact. 62.9% hard hits. Minimal sample for batted ball events, but there's a lot of hard hit balls in there. Logan O'Hoppe, pretty decent catcher target. 82 plate appearances, hitting 301, 370, 459, creating runs 42% better than average. 2 home runs. Mickey Moniak, Joe Adell. Moniak, once upon a time, was supposed to be a good player. Showed signs of life last year, showing nothing so far this season. Joe Adell was supposed to be a premium power hitter. He's got 2 home runs. He's slashing 316, 372, 553 with a 237 ISO over 43 plate appearances. Putting bat on ball pretty effectively so far this year. Didn't really do that in his previous chances. Maybe this is the year for Joe Adell. Luis Rengifo, Zach Neto at the bottom of the lineup, just kind of stretching things out. Rengifo, by far the preferred option between those two. But, Angels, not really a good spot. If anything, you can attack the popularity of Bailey Ober on DraftKings and look at it from a game theory perspective, and maybe you take like a short stack of like Trout, Ward, Sano, or Trout, Ward, Logan O'Hoppe. You could even maybe 5-man that. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5 like that. It's not a high-end stack, but I don't think they're off the board because they are showing a little bit of power. You could get the bad day from Ober, obviously. He's not elite in any way. He's just good and pitch and can work deep into a game, and he's just very, very cheap. So in terms of taking some cheap bats with one superstar, targeting the highest owned value pitcher on the DraftKings slate, just from that perspective, I think the Angels are on the board as a stack, but it's probably not going to work out. Probably pretty low priority, but that is one angle for this slate for sure, because a lot of people are just going to have that overshare. So Sandoval is a light yes, 7,200. He's effectively priced. I think you can get there, but not the most important pitcher on the slate. Ober on DraftKings is a big yes, but he comes with a ton of ownership and some interest in the other side, just angling in against that ownership with some Angels bats. 8,500 on FanDuel, very playable, but I like some of the value options around him a little bit better in the projections. Dennis says, I think the Yanks have scored a combined 5 runs the last 6 times I've stacked them, by the way. Same here. Same here. Art Stanton defending Trevor Bauer in the chat. He's got more than one woman talking about it and kind of a track record of that sort of thing. But look, not to get into a debate about what people like to do in their personal sex lives. If that's just, pushing girls around and everything, as long as it's consensual and you get somebody's permission, like, go for it. Seems like there is a little bit of a track record for people who either regret the decision to let him go as far as he likes to go or didn't actually give permission for it. So, think of him what you will. I just never really liked him as a person before that stuff. Just seemed like kind of a dick. But he's a very talented pitcher. I'll give him that. Don't want him on the Yankees. $10K for Zach Gallen, $11,000 on the FanDuel slate. Paying a bit of a matchup tax on FanDuel, I think. Some question marks with Gallen. Didn't look great to start the year. Had a 3 strikeout game over 5 innings against the lowly Rockies in a home start in Arizona. Faced the Yankees, struck out 6, walked 3, but pitched a clean game, only gave up 3 hits. And he only gave up 1 earned run in that 5-inning start against the Rockies. Gave up 3 on the road at Colorado, but struck out 10, allowed 8 hits in 5 innings. Wasn't bad there. Struck out 7, walked 2, gave up 4 hits, but no runs in 6 innings against St. Louis. But everybody's doing that to St. Louis. And then at San Francisco, 5 innings in his most recent start, gave up 2 home runs, struck out 6, 5 earned runs on 9 hits. It's a little bit of up and down so far for Zach Gallen, but a very talented pitcher, obviously, assuming that everything's right. I don't want to go out on a limb and speculate that it's not, but like 50.7% hard hits so far this year. It's a lot. It's up from 46% last year, 91.5 miles an hour of exit velo last year. It's 90.9 this year. He's typically good at keeping the ball in the yard despite that. This year's barrel rate in the tiny sample is lower than last year's, which is a good sign. Strikeouts are up a little bit. Walks are also up a little bit. Just a 3 ERA, even with the messy starts in there. So, again, I'm not saying he's necessarily off. It's just hasn't quite looked right. You can maybe kind of see that in what Stuff Plus has graded his Arsenal out at so far this year. It's actually an interesting exercise real quick. (2023) I'm sure he was qualified. So again, this is very early and it's short sample. But Gallen's Stuff Plus for the full Arsenal Stuff Plus rating for all of last year was 106, 6% better than average, or 6 points better than average. So we're down fairly significantly early on in just like trying to capture the measure of how his full arsenal of pitches looks right now. So that's kind of where the doesn't look quite right. You know, it's not chasing a narrative like we've seen it. But it's kind of reflected by that Stuff Plus dip. That could bounce back with 2 good starts, though. It's an ongoing thing. But it's maybe the best way to summarize it. So I love Zach Gallen against this team with a 27.8% strikeout rate for this projected lineup. We've targeted this Mariners team successfully several times already this season. A couple of them are coming around a little bit, like Julio's up to a 276, 317, 337, 1 home run, 7 stolen bases. Got a long way to go, but pulling it together a little bit. Josh Rojas, if he's in the leadoff spot, is probably a better option than J.P. Crawford right now. Small sample, but 315, 383 can get himself to first base, set the table a little. Cal Raleigh's got 6 home runs. Mitch Haniger's got 3. Jorge Polanco's got 3. Limited power down lineup, limited run creation down lineup, but just an absolute ton of strikeouts for this team. So I think Gallen is, it's tougher to swallow on the FanDuel slate. At 10,000 on DraftKings, I think you could just fire away. It's just a normal Zach Gallen against a bad opponent. You can see where he ranks out. It's a little bit cheaper than Nola, a little bit more expensive than these guys. I do prefer these two, and Eflin pretty significantly for 1,000 less. That's a huge discount. But there's no reason to shy away from paying $10K for Zach Gallen. It's just there are other options. 11 on FanDuel is challenging. A lot easier to justify Corbin Burns against the Athletics for 11.5. And then everybody else cheaper. I do think he's playable. I do think he's on the board. I would, across 150 lineups, certainly have some. If he's low owned, then it's more reason to press the accelerator down a little bit and grab additional shares. And again, if he's off at all, it's not by a lot. But for a pitcher, not by a lot could lead to tragically bad situations sometimes. So I'm keeping an eye on him, to say the least. Emerson Hancock, 6,600, 6,900, just a 16.7% strikeout rate, a 6.10 ERA with a 4.15 xFIP. Hasn't walked anybody really, but he's given up some power, some premium contact. Just kind of looking like a target for some Diamondbacks bats to me. A couple of guys over the magic number in the heart of the lineup with Jock Peterson and Christian Walker. A couple of guys approaching it in the high 7s and the mid 8s with Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel, Eugenio Suarez, Corbin Carroll if he's hitting down lineup at 8.58. Carroll really struggling to start the season, 208, 321, 260. The subject of a Yahoo should you sell low on Corbin Carroll season-long trade article that I did not read. Just saw the headline and decided I don't need to read that. Because Corbin Carroll last year hit 25 home runs and stole 54 bases. Was one of the best assets in season-long baseball. Was drafted in the first round this year as a high pick for a reason. These people that give up on things in April are bananas. Point is, Corbin Carroll's going to be fine. I like the idea of some cheap Jock Peterson power. 4,200, 2,800. Again, above the magic number. He's just got 2 on the season, but he's been doing good work with the bat. 326, 468, 543 at 217 ISO. Creating runs 80% better than average. Peterson's been good. Lourdes Gurriel's been tremendous. He's got 5 home runs. Blaze Alexander's got 3 home runs and a stolen base and a pretty good track record through the minors as well. If he's hitting second for 3,900, 3,000, helps bring the prices down of some guys around him that are honestly already a little bit cheap for their talent. These Diamondbacks deserve some shares, deserve some consideration in this spot. A lot of really good run creators, a lot of low strikeout rates or low to mid-range strikeout rates, a lot of walks, good amount of power. Gonna have to strongly consider that, especially if if it's this version of the lineup with Alexander up there. I'm gonna strongly consider them for some shares. So I wouldn't play Hancock. And then if you're playing Mariners against Gallen, say you want to target some Gallen ownership, or you want to target some of the rumors of his early demise, it would start with Julio, Cal Raleigh, and then pick your poison with like Josh Rojas off the top, looking for some correlated scoring with these guys, or maybe one of these two to drive these guys in, depending on which way you want to play that scenario. Down lineup, they've really struggled. Ty France did hit a handful of home runs over the past few years, but more of a hit tool oriented player. 266, 322, a 103 WRC plus, but not very productive for DFS most days. Mitch Garver hasn't done much at the plate at all this year in his 80 plate appearances, but does have pretty good catcher power, but really struggling right now, and hitting 7th doesn't do you any favors with at 3,600 when you've got a $4,100 comparable power catcher in the 3 spot. Luke Raley, Dylan Moore, a lot of strikeouts for Raley. Fair amount of strikeouts for Dylan Moore so far as well. He's at least stolen 5 bases, created runs 24% better than average, but really pretty weak down lineup for the Mariners. So if you're stacking them, again, like these two, and then 3, or these two and, one of these two guys as a short stack maybe, best 5-man's probably just straight through there. But they've been bad. We've been looking at them for with pitchers on the other side for a reason. They've been pretty bad. So D-backs bats are a yes, and with kind of growing enthusiasm as I'm looking it over. Zach Gallen is a definite yes, but with a little bit of an asterisk for we're keeping an eye on him. Hancock is a no, and the Mariners are kind of not that realistic for me. 2 games to go. Handful of people still out there listening. Appreciate you guys. Larry realized I was talking slow, and that's when he knew that he was off the 1.5 times speed and caught up with the live show. Vontae Max says, Garrett Cole? Never heard of him. I don't know what that's in relation to, but boy, could we use Garrett Cole back. That would be pretty nice. My buddy Steve Green, big Phillies fan, big Philly everything fan, sent out a text yesterday evening on our group text thread. I would take Zach Wheeler over any of the current Yankees pitchers. No kidding. You would? With Garrett Cole injured and not in the rotation? Zach Wheeler over Luis Gil, Nestor Cortez, Carlos Rodon. Yeah, of course you take Zach Wheeler. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. I just sent him back. Duh. It was when you were talking about heel stats. Oh, all right. Yeah, who needs Garrett Cole? Yeah. Aaron Nola, Joe Musgrove. Good pitching matchup, especially if you look back like a couple years. Nola projects out better for the money, 10-1, 10-3 across sites. A little bit easier to reach, I guess, on FanDuel. He's not been completely sharp, but he also hasn't been completely bad. And he pitches deep into games. So you do have a lot of upside for Nola to clear off some mistakes. It's a Padres lineup that's somewhat productive. But they've got their ups and their downs. They do have a lot of positive WRC plus through the lineup. They've hit for a little bit of power. They steal bases. So it's not the safest spot in the world for Nola. But I like Nola to grow from here, especially in terms of the strikeouts. Last time out, went 8 against the lousy White Sox. Gave up 2 earned runs, a home run, but struck out 7, walked 1. Got the win bonus, got the quality start bonus. Was perfectly serviceable. Also pitched into the 8th the start before that. That was also against a bad team. That was against Colorado in Philadelphia. Struck out 9, walked 1, gave up a homer in that one. Just the 1 earned run, 4 hits total. And again, was pitching in the 8th inning. The home runs are a little bit concerning. Home run to each of those lousy teams, just 1 each. And then 2 home runs to the Cardinals, which is another underperforming team. And 2 home runs in the first game of the year, a forgivable 2 home runs to the Braves. So a little bit of power generated against him so far this year. But the strikeouts have bounced back over the last 2 starts. He's pitched deep into those last 2. He pitched in the 6th inning in the 2 starts before those. So 5 2/3 in his second start of the year against Washington. Just struck out 4, walked 4, but no runs on 2 hits over 5 2/3. And then went 6 in that game against the Cards in St. Louis. Struck out just 3, walked 3, 2 home runs allowed, but those are the only 2 runs and just 3 hits. So again, not quite sharp, but probably not far away. 31 1/3 in 5 starts, probably the best best depth on the site. Same total that Musgrove has reached in 6 starts. 3.16 ERA with a 3.80 xFIP. Again, like I said, we're not far off. Stuff plus is down. Home runs are up. Some things to be concerned about if we're only looking at the numbers, and not great opponents so far this year. Padres probably the best outside of the Braves. Best team he's faced in the last 5 anyway. Musgrove for 74.83 has not been that good this year. 5.74 ERA with a 4.84 xFIP, 16.8% strikeout rate. Oddly, Stuff Plus likes his arsenal better. You get those weird blips, especially in short samples. He went 7 in his last start, 3 strikeouts, no walks, but gave up 2 home runs, 3 earned on 5 hits to Toronto. He's also had a little bit of a blip with the home runs, 2 in that game, 1 apiece to the Brewers and the Cubbies. Went 6 against the Brewers, struck out 3. Just 4 innings against the Cubs, but struck out 5. Best start of the year was against the Cards. Went 6, struck out 7, walked 1, just 1 earned on 5 hits. Just hopes that he rounds into form. Pitcher that we know pretty well. Don't love the matchup at all against the Phillies. Happy that he's lower projected between these two. Pretty easy to get away from him. But the 83's got a little bit of appeal. The Joe Musgrove that we know and love over time could keep this Phillies team off the board. Last year he was at a 3.05 ERA, a 3.70 xFIP, had a 24.3% strikeout rate, much better than this year so far. He's got the exact same strike numbers, 11.4 swinging both years, 28.4 last year's CSW, 28.2 CSW this year. So how far off is he really? Premium contact hasn't been terrible. It's up a little bit in hard hits and exit velo in the small sample. 3.65% home run rate. 2.51 last year, 2.97 the year before. Good at limiting hard hits. Good at limiting barrels. Musgrove's on the list of pitchers that I do think could keep this Phillies team down. It's just, what form are we in? Are we really there yet? The fact that it's his 7th start of the year where most guys are making their 6th is encouraging for just the upward trajectory. But on a deep slate, maybe not one to go out of your way for at 8,300 on FanDuel. I would have him in the mix across 150 lineups, but probably limited shares compared to the Louis Seals of the day. At 74 on DraftKings, he becomes more interesting. He's a little bit more firmly on that board. But you still do get Bailey Ober at 68. You get Heel at 78. You get Buto at 71. Sandoval at 72. I'd probably just target the matchups. I prefer this matchup and the upside there. I think that one's pretty obvious. Prefer that matchup, but he's going to be super popular. But when we get to these two guys, within a 1.5 or so, and both a slight bit cheaper than Musgrove, I kind of do like targeting the Cards or the Twins with similar type pitching rather than throwing a pitcher at the Phillies bats for my 7,000 and change on DraftKings there. So despite the slightly higher projection, probably a little bit more love for those two options. I think that's it. That group. Yeah, because none of these guys are in that mix. So Phillies bats, probably the preferred side facing Musgrove. You see Kyle Schwarber above the magic number at 11.32. He's got 6 homers on the year. Below the Mendoza line, 305 on base, just a 92 WRC plus. As long as the on base goes up over time, he'll be fine in terms of the WRC plus. And we're really just looking for home runs out of Schwarbs. Trey Turner, 336, 388, 477, 2 homers, 6 steals, a 142 WRC plus, 48.8% hard hit rate for 6,100, 3,600. A little bit cheap for his talent on FanDuel. Should be above the 4,000. Bryce Harper hit the baby bomb yesterday. We talked about it during the show, coming back to the lineup after paternity leave. Picked up the home run. He's got 5 on the season at 232 ISO, 126 WRC plus, and just is Bryce Harper. Easy enough to play. Alec Boehm, 4,600, 3,700. Very cheap on DraftKings. Appropriately priced up on FanDuel. He's been really good. 3 home runs, a stolen base, a 222 ISO, creating runs 70% better than average, getting on at a 423 clip over 103 plate appearances. 104 rather. Alec Boehm has been really good this year, and DraftKings hasn't caught up to it. So take advantage of that if you're stacking Phillies. JT Realmuto, under 5,000, easy to play on DraftKings where you need catchers. Scuffling along so far this year, but we know what the upside with Realmuto looks like. Brandon Marsh, productive lefty bat, 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases, a 125 WRC plus with a 243 ISO. Very good at getting on base, hits for a little bit of power. Nick Castellanos, 4,000, 2,500. Slow to get started this year. Kind of problematic. But I think with the price down as far as it is, maybe you can rely on track record to get a few shares of him in. Bryson Stott, also not off to a great start, but another player, had a breakout year last year. Definitely worth the money with his price down at second base. Johan Rojas, productive enough, seven stolen bases. Needs to get on base a little bit more to truly be an effective wraparound. But if you're desperate for a cost savings, you can wrap him back around to these three guys at the top. In the Padres lineup, a little bit more skeptical there. You do have Fernando Tatis drawn at 10.79, so you've got somebody over the magic number for a home run in that lineup as well. You get Manny Machado coming back to the lineup. He's off paternity leave too. It's funny that him and Harper are playing each other now after talking about yesterday and somebody's tweet that I had seen where they've got like dead even numbers through their current age seasons, and then we're out on paternity leave at the same time. So now playing each other in their returns. So getting Manny back is a boost. Bogart's up to 227, 298, 309, responding to our line in the sand that we drew for his slide the other day. A couple of decent games out of him. Still 4,700, 2,900. Very cheap. Easy enough to get to. Cronenworth, 42, 3,000. The pods are effectively priced. I just don't like targeting Aaron Nola. Even when he's not pitching great, he's usually pitching pretty well and working deep into that game. So not my favorite spot on the board. But if you're rostering them, Bogarts, Tatis, Cronenworth, Machado, and Ha-Seong Kim would be my five. Everybody out there, I think, knows by now that I don't love Jurickson Profar, but he's at 295, 406, 466, creating runs 51% better than average. Definitely has been playable. I do like Jackson Merrill. He's been holding up nicely over his 98 plate appearances so far, creating runs 25% better than average, 4 steals, getting on base and hitting the ball at a decent clip. Campusano, playable catcher. Graham Pauley, very cheap at the bottom of the lineup, but for good cause. So really, it's the prime names that we've talked about all through the season. Kind of a four corners game. Both pitchers in their own way at their respective prices, somewhat on the board at least, but probably better options for everything. Same thing with the bats, like the Phillies against Musgrove is my preference between the two, but not a big slate priority. And the Padres are playable against Nola, but the lesser of these two, and definitely deprioritized slate-wise. And the last game of the night, 13 games, 2.5 hours in. We finally make it. I told you we'd talk about this one eventually. No Stanton for New York. Oh, that sucks. Downgrade for, bit of downgrade for the Yanks. What did they do? Volpe, Soto, Judge, Rizzo hitting cleanup, Glaber hitting fifth. Trent Grisham in the lineup. Blech. Not a Trent Grisham fan. Grisham hitting ninth for the Yanks. Otherwise, it's the same lineup with Glaber and Verdugo sliding up spots. Ozzy Cabrera moves to 7. Austin Wells hitting 8th. So you do get Wells instead of Trevino as the catcher. And then Larry was just pointing out the bottom of the Padres lineup is Campusano, Graham Pauley, and Jose Azocar. So you don't even get Jackson Merrill, which is a downgrade for the Padres. Only a slight downgrade. The guys that we truly want, Bogarts, Tatis, Cronenworth, Machado, and Ha-Seong Kim are all still there. We do not have either of these lineups. What we do have are some pitchers to talk about. Quinn Priester, I don't think we go there. He's made one start, came on the 19th, faced 21 Red Sox, gave up 3 home runs, 2 strikeouts and a walk, 4 earned, 5 total runs on 7 hits, over 4 1/3. Renowned for a big curveball coming up through the minors. But in the opportunities he's gotten in the show so far, hasn't really shown that much. Last year he went 10 appearances, 8 starts, 50 innings in the show, had a 7.74 ERA and a 5.10 xFIP, struck out just 15.4% of opposing hitters while walking 11.5%, which isn't great. In that 50 innings, he allowed 12 home runs to 234 hitters. That is also not great. That amounted to a 5.13% home run rate on 8.3% barrels, 47% hard hits, 7.74 ERA with a 5.10 xFIP last year. And you can see the walk rate, the whip, low strikeout rate. So nothing that he did in the minors has translated to the show yet. Mid 20s strikeout rates at several levels of the minor leagues in reasonably sized samples. But obviously no Jared Jones, certainly no Paul Skeens, at least not yet. 5,200 is a no, 6,000 is a no against this Giants team. Wind blowing out in San Francisco. We're drawing some power against. 10.54 for Lamont Wade in the home run model, a 14.81 for Jorge Soler. Matt Chapman at 9.17 and just cost 2,900 at third base on FanDuel, 45 on DraftKings. Some decent power bats to work with. And then, some reasonable expectation of correlated scoring. Jung-Hoo Lee out of the leadoff spot, 269, 333 at the front end of the triple slash, creating runs 1% better than average. Lamont Wade gets on base like crazy, 471 on base over 70 plate appearances. Last year it was 373 over 519. Hits for power as well. Really like Lamont Wade out of the 2 spot. Soler, 4 home runs on the season and 107, just a 174 ISO. Hasn't really gotten it going, but when Jorge Soler does get it going, look out. He's down to just 4,800, 3,000. Pretty monster number. What was he, 3rd overall in the home run model? Yeah, 3rd overall in the home run model, just behind Soto and Judge. Not bad. I was tempted to make Matt Chapman my home run pick of the day. I just love that option at that price. You can see premium contact is always there with Matt Chapman. He's got 4 home runs this season, just a 228, 278 hitter, striking out at a 22.2% clip. That's down from last year's 28.4 so far. That's a good sign. 188 ISO, 94 WRC plus. Hasn't been great, but I'm just home run hunting if I'm making that play. Patrick Bailey, Tyler Estrada, Mike Yastrzemski, Nick Ahmed from the bottom of the lineup. Only Patrick Bailey has been good so far this season. 2 home runs, a stolen base, a 139 WRC plus. Tyler Estrada, I have a lot of faith in the counting stats. Some reasonable mid-range power, some steals, 14 homers, 23 steals last year, 14 and 21 the year before that. Cheap enough at 3,600 at second base, 2,900 multi-position on FanDuel. Just prefer him when he's hitting up the lineup a little bit and things are going well. So far this year, just 232, 253, 400. And then Kyle Harrison. You can see that there's a lot of power showing on that side of the equation. Harrison sitting at just a 5.0 ERA, 4.24 xFIP, 21.1% strikeout rate so far. 4.4% walk rate is probably the best thing he's done because he's given up premium contact. He's given up some home run power. This is over 5 starts. Didn't allow a home run in the last game, but he faced Arizona. He struck out 5, walked 1, 3 earned runs on 6 hits, only went 4 innings in that one. Went 6 in each of the 2 starts before that, gave up exactly 3 earned runs in each of them, gave up exactly 1 home run in each of them, 8 hits to the Marlins, 5 hits to the Nationals. Struck out 8 Nationals in 6 innings, only 2 Marlins in 6 innings. Against the Dodgers, he only struck out 4, gave up 4 earned on a home run, walked 3, 2 earned against the Padres, struck out 5. So we're not quite there yet. The 5.0 ERA, he's not, in no game has he given up 5 runs. 3 earned in each of the last 3 games and 4 earned against the Dodgers and then 2 earned runs in the start against the Padres to begin the year. It's just, that stretched over his innings that he's pitched. But I don't know that he's been necessarily as bad as it might look like, but Stuff Plus is a little bit down on him right now at 93. He's definitely given up power. Home runs in each of the first 4 games of the season, 2 in the first one, and then 1 each in the other ones. And we've got some reasonable expectation of power upside against the lefty here. Let's see if we have any lineups. I don't think we do. So the ones that are interesting, Brian Reynolds at a very realistic 13.12, I think is a real home run mark. 3 home runs for him so far, a 125 WRC plus on the season. Their best player overall. McCutchen at a 10.08, it's believable. McCutchen's putting a 15% barrel rate on the ball, 45% hard hits. He's got 3 home runs, a stolen base, a 169 ISO. Hasn't been great over 74 plate appearances, but can still hit the ball with authority. And that never really went away. Just barreled a few more so far this year in small sample of batted ball events. Ke'Bryan Hayes, not really barreling the ball, but still hitting it hard. 264, 359, 333, 99 WRC plus, but no homers, no steals. Disappointing in the counting stats department, but he only cost 4,100, 2,900, 8.85 in the home run model. Good enough. Edward Olivares, a 9.15. He's got 3 homers in just 59 plate appearances, mashing when he makes contact with the ball with a 13.6% barrel rate. Connor Joe, good against lefties, so there's a little bit of an uptick there. He's got 2 home runs, 2 steals, 137 WRC plus, 292, 386 overall this season. Michael A., no home runs, 258, 294, 306, 67 WRC plus. Hasn't been great in terms of production, but decent contact numbers, 9.8% barrels, 36.6% hard hits. It's down from the 13.5% barrels that led to our sneaky home run option last year with 21 homers and 388 plate appearances. Also his 13 stolen bases. So if Michael A is in the lineup, especially if he's sitting up here somewhere, he's at least somewhat interesting against a lefty that's kind of scuffling along for allowing power. O'Neal Cruz, star-type talent, raw skills, let's say. 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases, but striking out at a 35.5% clip. Kyle Harrison could find some strikeouts at the bottom of this lineup. There's a lot of free swingers down here. Henry Davis, it might be Joey Bart in that spot. We'll see who's catching. But Henry Davis off to a really bad start. Joey Bart off to a really good start. Suffered an injury and missed a couple games. Might even be a closer race if that hadn't happened. Alika Williams, just an afterthought to round things off, but he's got a stolen base, a 133 WRC plus, 323, 364, 484 to start the season over 35 plate appearances. It's okay. It's a playable part as a wraparound guy. I don't know how much Harrison I roster. You know, with the depth of this slate looking like it is, he's just kind of in the middle of the board. He's not effectively priced as a value option really on either site. I think we could get the quality start here. I think he could definitely have a good day and find some strikeouts against this team. And I think a lot of his talent, he is one of the top prospects in all of baseball in terms of pitching, just hasn't really fully put everything together yet this year. So I think we wait on Harrison, 84, 82. We're not really missing the boat for value there. Projects out just fine if you do want him, if you believe in the spot. So Harrison, just an if you want him kind of a, he's there. I wouldn't take him out of my player pool, put it that way. Quinn Priester, want no part of, take him out of the player pool. Giants bats definitely are interesting. That's a yes. And I think the Pirates bats on the other side, somewhat interesting. I think that's a yes, especially based on the power that's shining through the home run model there, and then some quality bats for very cheap prices. We did it, gang. Oh, that's right. And Larry C. pointing out the best possible note. Joey Bart revenge game in with his hot start. Obviously, we know that revenge not really a thing, but it's always fun to chase those narratives. And yeah, Joey Bart once upon a time was the heir apparent to Buster Posey, and just, kept on missing his shot, and now is in Pittsburgh and mashing. Larry likes the San Fran stacks. Going to have a ton of stacks in the 20 lineups. I like it. Vontae Mack, no matter what, says I like Grisham's books. I assume we're not talking about Trent Grisham then, Mr. John Grisham, famous lawyer. I actually watched just during the day yesterday when I was putting the baseball stuff together. The Rainmaker was on cable. The one where he's suing that's a John Grisham book. He's suing the life insurance company, and he's with Claire Danes is in it, and she was getting beat up by her husband, and it's Matt Damon and a bunch of really good actors. Danny DeVito's the shyster lawyer with him, and John Voight is the big lawyer on the other side. Danny Glover's the judge. Really, really good movie. So I think that's it, gang. Looking at the board. Corbin Burns, easy to get to as the top pitcher option at 9,800 on DraftKings. Worth paying for it at 11,500 on FanDuel. But if you don't want that, you've got Zach Eflin for just 2,000 less, facing an equally bad, if not worse, White Sox team. Love the upside for Eflin. Just got to have that game play and play clean. Aaron Nola, I left his projection alone. I'm a full-time believer in Aaron Nola and his skills, and like I said, I don't think he's far off. But if you said you had Zach Gallen, Luis Hill, Nathan Eovaldi above him, maybe even Shota Imanaga and Chris Sale above him, I wouldn't quibble with it. I think they're all within range of one another. So give or take Nola. Zach Gallen, tremendous matchup, but we're keeping an eye on him. Haven't liked the early form, but 11,000, 10,000, you can definitely get there with that matchup. It's a killer strikeout matchup, and they've just been bad to start the season, and he is very good when things are going right. Love Luis Hill's strikeout upside. Need to wrangle the walks. If he blows up, it's going to be because he gave up a few free passes and then like a homer or something. But very good strikeout upside for the money. Nathan Eovaldi, tough matchup against the Reds, but there's plenty of strikeouts on the board for him. So he falls into that middle of the road list as well. You probably could roll a few shares of like Eovaldi Heel, Eovaldi Bailey Ober just to get different and lower your cost a little bit. I think an Eovaldi Ober is not necessarily taking the top off as in terms of like, now I can't reach a ceiling. It's lower ceilings most of the time than like Burns, than Eflin, than some of these others. But for the discount, I think that's fairly playable from the mid-range. So if you wanted to go like mid pitchers, I think this is a deep enough slate to do that. You also get like Joe Musgrove for 74, or Buto or Sandoval to mix into that list as well. Imanaga could definitely succeed against the Red Sox. Very talented pitcher. I like the projection. 10-2 is tough on FanDuel. 9-6 looks a little bit better on DraftKings. But when you've got those other guys in the mix at much cheaper prices, it makes it difficult. But wouldn't surprise me at all if he's one of the top pitchers of the day. Very, very talented pitcher. Chris Sale. Tough matchup for strikeouts. The only thing I'm worried about there is, do the Guardians limit the strikeout upside? Maybe dink and dunk a few base hits and collect a few runs, but I don't think they blow him up. 9,800, 9,300, he's effectively priced. No issues with getting to some Chris Sale, and if he's very low owned, I think you can get to it a little bit more. Musgrove, some definite questions, but on DraftKings, especially at 74, easy enough to get to some shares there. It's just a bad matchup. As I said when we were breaking that game down, I prefer Buto against St. Louis or Patrick Sandoval, I think, against Minnesota for a little bit cheaper if I'm going to that part of the board. Kyle Harrison, definitely not quite on form yet. We're seeing a lot for the Pittsburgh side. Not quite priced as effectively as those $7,000 guys around him. If he was in their price range, 74, same price as Musgrove, I'd be more interested. Not unplayable by any means. Very talented young kid, just has to put it together. Buto, definitely playable for value. Sandoval, I think, is playable for value and strikeout upside, but it wouldn't surprise me if he gave up 5-6 runs and a couple homers. Cutter Crawford, I think, is just kind of high priced, facing a Chicago team that can get on base, but he's been excellent this season. It was difficult to get him to reflect an appropriate projection today. I had to play with the numbers with him a little bit. I just think he's high priced at 97 on FanDuel. 83 on DraftKings, I would pay for Cutter Crawford in this spot. It's just, we've got a lot of options that also look like that project out a little better against worse teams. Chris Bassett is probably where I draw the line, just because of the matchup against the Dodgers. Otherwise, 81 would be a playable price, but it just doesn't look right. Stone, Logan Allen, Miles Michaelis, Colin Ray, all these guys are no's. Most of those guys at the bottom of the board are targets, particularly Logan Allen with the Braves, Colin Ray with the Yankees. Some Emerson Hancock, the Diamondbacks really started to look good to me while I was talking about him. Quinn Priester with the Giants, I like a lot as a spot. Graham Ashcraft with the Rangers, they were one of the top ranked stacks. Ross Stripling, targeting him with the Orioles, I think makes for a very compelling stack. That's one quick shortcut to analyze a slate. You look at, all right, who are the top pitchers of the day? Who are they facing? I don't want to stack these teams that much. Who are the bottom pitchers of the day? Who are they facing? Oh, it's some of the best teams. How about that? I want to stack those teams. Hey, could have cut the show 2 hours and 40 minutes shorter. Vontae Mack, it's an awesome movie. Well, it's like a seasonal movie. I watch it a bunch every year this weekend. Oh, Draft Day. All right. I thought you were talking about The Rainmaker. I was like, why the hell would that be a seasonal movie? Yeah, Vontae Mack, no matter what, from Draft Day, of course, the Kevin Costner classic. And yeah, with NFL draft season. By the way, how about my Giants? Actually doing the right thing. I would have traded the pick back if they weren't going to take J.J. McCarthy instead of taking the wide receiver and just try and stack up a little bit. But no real qualms with the talent that they took at wide receiver with that pick. So happy they didn't overdraft a quarterback. Happy they didn't trade up to overdraft a quarterback, most especially. One last look at the home run board, and then we're getting out of here. And yes, Larry C., Jennifer Garner could do a hell of a lot better than a 30 years her senior Kevin Costner in that movie. Aaron Judge, top of the board, and I cheated and went with him as the home run pick of the day. I love the spot for the Yankees' power against Colin Ray. Juan Soto right there. Stanton not in the lineup. Maybe you get a pinch hit home run out of Giancarlo Stanton at some point. Rizzo above the magic number. Glaber's probably in here not too far off of it. That's probably him. Yep, that's him. A lot of power for San Fran. We got Jorge Soler. We get Lamont Wade Jr. Some of these other guys. Matt Chapman just below the magic number. Vladdy Guerrero, kind of an outlier for Toronto, although you do George Springer also above the magic number, so not a total outlier. The Braves, ton of power bats from them, but not all the way at the top of the board. We've got some interesting spots. Mike Trout on his own as a one-off is always playable. There's Reynolds from the Pittsburgh side of that Pittsburgh-San Francisco game. So again, that one just is looking interesting for power on both sides. McCutch is over the magic number. O'Neill Cruz and Brian Reynolds from the Pittsburgh side. Kind of interesting. That is about it for me, gang. That's a lot of talking. 5:46. Basketball started already, but I got to get baseball updated and then get some lineups in. So, going to wish everybody well. Wish you good weekends. Tomorrow, projections and everything are going to go up. We might not have updates coming in with lineups, so keep an eye on things. Keep an eye on the news for tomorrow. I'll let you know with a note on the projections. It just depends on what slate we're doing. But I'm going to Asbury Park tomorrow, so won't be around during the day. But otherwise, we'll be back beginning of next week for more show action. All the content and everything will be up over the weekend, as usual, except for that update thing. And thank you very much. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Follow our pals over at acemind.io. Use promo code rotoscouts to get a 20% discount on your first month over there. We're seeing a show. It's actually, I believe, at the Asbury Lanes there. We're seeing Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. Fantastic punk rock cover band. They play a bunch of old radio hits from like the 90s and the 70s and the 80s, and they do theme albums for like a bunch of country songs, and they just cover them with like, fast punk rock. Fun band. All right. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. I'll see you guys on Monday. Later.